welcome to another episode of the Group Up Podcast. We're here for the great tank debate. I've got an incredible lineup of tank players and one imposter sitting with me here, ready to talk about the state of tanks and the hot topic issue of why nobody wants to play tank anymore. Last week, we had a lengthy debate where Samito and Hawk argued that it was largely down to 6v6 and the removal of 6v6 for 5v5. But we'll see what these guys have to say. So let's introduce my guest in the bottom right. The most handsome hog main around, and there's not many, to be honest. It is UnsaltedSalted. What's up, man?
Hey guys, I'm happy to be here. I got some interesting takes, and I'm excited for you guys to hear about it.
You never don't have interesting takes. Every time you've been on the podcast, it's always left some ripples in its wake. So we'll see what Salt is cooking this time. In the top right, it's a very handsome call. I think everyone will agree. Looking with his new stash, I love the look. Yeatle, what's up, man?
Yo, what up? I've got some somewhat neutral, lukewarm takes, but I think I also got some spicy ones. So what up?
I'm looking forward to what he's got. In the bottom left, our last traditional tank main. Coming heated, he says, is my man Flats. Flats, what's up?
Hello.
Been a while, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. This season's been very interesting, so I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about.
Oh, it has been. Interesting is one way to describe it. It's lots always cooking. Lots is cooking these days. Gone are the days where nothing was happening in Overwatch. Some shit is always going down these days, which is at least a different world we live in. And finally, to round us off, in the top left, the coach himself, the expert on everything coming to Overwatch. It's my man Spilo.
Really?
Spilo, what's up?
Doing all right. I feel like this is like a joke, you know, a ball main, a Roadhog main, a Reinhardt main, and a dwarf coach walk into a bar.
Exactly what happens. We'll find out. Thanks for joining me. All right, guys, let's kick into it. To start us off, then, we're just going to do touch base with each of you. Give me a couple sentence summary of where you stand in a state of tank at the moment, because I want to know what the feelers are. I want to know roughly what you guys are thinking. So we'll start with Salt, who said he has some interesting takes. Salt, just a couple sentences, your summary of like state of tank, and if there's any particular tanks you think are, you know, outliers, whether that's in a bad way or a good way, let me know.
Well, I'm on the fence that tank is the worst role in the game, and that, I mean, you could argue, yes, Orisa's good, but that's all we ever get. Every season, every tank is bad. You get one tank that's good. You play it. We have to go through it for 2 months of the same shit. The other tank doesn't die. You don't die. And it's just horrible. But I'm on the wayside that tank is the worst role in the game.
Okay, great start. All right, I'm going to take it to Flats next. Flats, tank is the worst role in the game. Agree, disagree? Just your summary.
We'd probably disagree on the reasons, but I'll agree with the take. I do think it's the worst, but I mean, it depends on what you mean by subjective the worst. Like, is it the worst to play? Is it the least fun? Is it the least impactful? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's different things to talk about there. I don't think we'd probably agree on all of it. My overall feeling is the balanced philosophy of how to deal with tanks is fundamentally very flawed. And DPS and support very clearly have like much more fun and things seem to be more options to them, but the amount of the lack of, I guess, mistakes you're allowed on tank is unbelievably insane compared to the other two roles and makes it miserable. And I think that mostly comes from a balanced philosophy standpoint.
I like it. All right, Yeatle, give us the third tank take.
I also don't think it's a format issue. I think it's a balance issue. I think tanks are there's a lot of things in the game going into 5v5 that are a bit broken, and it's hard to outplay them as tank. And I feel like in Overwatch 1, there was more outplayability. So my take is that the problem with tank not feeling so good is balance issue.
But you also agree that it's kind of not in a fun space.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So not very happy chappies here, Spilo. How about you as someone more objective observer? What's your assessment on the state of tank?
I think tank, especially with 5v5, is objectively the role that has to deal with the worst of whatever Overwatch has to offer, whether that's the crowd control or the balance, as was brought up. So it's whether it's going to be the most effective or least effective, it's always going to feel the worst. And that leads to my second point, which is tank right now suffers from the indirect value problem where you can get a lot of value out of tank, but it doesn't feel very fun to do your job a lot of the time as tank. It feels a lot worse from Overwatch 1. And I think the problem is, how are we going to be able to fix that? Tank is an extremely effective role, I think, at the highest level, but it doesn't always feel like that. And I think that's what makes the role difficult to play.
I like it. I like it. Lots to unpack here already. From my POV, I've been playing tank for a couple of weeks, and I've never wanted to install Overwatch more. So I have not enjoyed it. I can definitely say I enjoy a lot of the tank heroes. Here's the thing: I enjoy a lot of the tank heroes. Recently picked up Doomfist thanks to Samito coaching, having a blast on that hero. I enjoy playing JunkerQueen a lot. She's a great tank. Enjoying Sigma as well as well as my original OGs of Reinhardt, Winston. But it has been miserable. The games have been. It feels like the burden is so high on the tank to like do so much. And when it comes to like carrying the game, it feels like you have to drop like 30-1 or something just to actually make sure you might win the game. So it's been a frustrating experience. I went back to support the last couple of days. I'm a better human now. I'm feeling way more chill. I'm enjoying life. So we'll get into all of those, but let's fixate first on this balance issue, because a couple of you, Yeatle and Flats, both said kind of like it's a balance thing. I think they've taken some wrong steps. I want to take it to Yeatle first. Yeatle, you've made some discussion videos on this, on where you feel like particularly Ball, the Fall of Ball video is a great one. And we'll talk about each tank, by the way, individually at some point in this video, so in this podcast. So we'll get to Ball specifically. But overall, what is it when you say balance is perhaps why tank feels not so fun? What do you think, what you mean by that?
I think there's a couple things that didn't translate well going into the Overwatch 2. And one of them being snipers, for example. Like in Overwatch 1, you could go 2 shields, or if you ran dive like Winston and Diva, you could have your Diva matrix your team through a choke, or go on the dive on the snipers. But in Overwatch 2, it's a little bit harder to deal with the snipers because not every tank has a shield or mobility. So if you're not playing one of those tanks, you're kind of screwed. Snipers are just one example because long range one shots. You're kind of at the mercy of your team whenever you play Havana if you don't have the better Widow player. That's just how it is. Um, Another thing is probably I'd say Sombra's hack is also a pretty bad one because the problem with hack is again the outplay ability. Like if she hacks you in stealth from like an angle or behind, there's not really much you can do about it if you're not on a certain tank. Like for example, Reinhardt hit a quick 180 shield, or Winston drop your bubble instantly. Like most of the other tanks, if she's hacking you, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't outplay that for the most part, other than I guess like spy checking on Diva or something like that. But that's like the second example. I think another one is cleanse, right? On Kiriko, the fact that you can be taking a 1v1 somewhere on the side of the map and then Kiriko just TPs and cleanse. How do you outplay that? How are you expected to be like, oh yeah, she had TP and cleanse, and now that 1v1 that it came down to the last HP that I was about to win it. I took the right calculation. She TP cleansed. And they can still shoot while they're in cleanse. Look at Overwatch 1, the people that had immortality per se, Reaper and Moira, they both fade, but they can't shoot, right? And then I'd say the only other really big problem in Overwatch 1 was Slamp. But anyways, I'm kind of digressing. But I think those things are all a lot more annoying to deal with in Overwatch 2 because you don't have the other tank. That's basically it.
But you're not.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
One more big thing, Ana in Overwatch 2 is actually a big problem because again, you don't have two tanks, so you can't matrix it, you can't shield it. No matter what, like the only people that can stop it, I think, are Sigma and Diva that can completely outplay both her cooldowns. Everybody else at most one cooldown, and I'd say half the tanks can't even outplay either of them. So like then you got the whole rest of the roster. It all comes down to my argument is that if you can't outplay it, it's broken. And there's a lot of that in Overwatch 2. And Ana's one of the big threats for that because you just can't outplay her sleeping or nading you if you don't have the ability to do it. So
and you just to be clear, because you said, oh, this is from now we're 5v5. You're not a believer that it would have been better in 6v6. Like we were better off in 6v6.
No. I think 6v6 does solve a lot of these problems. And I don't really care either way if it's 5v5 or 6v6, but I would like to see 5v5 on a good patch, like where they deal with these things that I'm claiming to be broken. Like if they dealt with that, I feel like 5v5 wouldn't be that bad for tanks.
Okay, well, I'm gonna let Salt chime in because he was almost performing a '90s R&B boy band number when you said that Ana was a problem. So Salt, like a lot of the things that Yeatle point out, you think those are the problems, or you think there's a bigger issue at play?
I mean, for sure, 5v5 does result in a lot of problems because 6v6, there's another person to, take an extra CC or have, an extra person to look at. But I think a big issue at hand is that, just as Yeatle said, supports in general just have way too much. They have an answer for everything. It's like, okay, I wait for cleanse. Okay, now I use this ability. Wait, the other support has invulnerability, or maybe a pull, or maybe a lamp, or I think it's just horrible as a tank to deal with it because it's literally like a checklist, like a shopping checklist. Oh yeah, there's cleanse, TP, nade, sleep. Okay, now I can go in, and then by the time you go in, it's back on rotation. And slipped my mind now, but yeah, I think 5v5 format just results in rock paper scissors as well, because you're just one tank, and obviously how Overwatch used to be, choosing a certain hero allowed you to get an advantage over the other person. When they're playing a certain hero, for example, Hog or Ana. But now it's such a easy key to use to win in 5v5. So yeah, 6v6 did allow you to stop a lot of that stuff from happening.
Interesting. I'm going to take it to Flash next. By the way, guys, feel free at any point to kind of jump in if you feel like someone's saying something and you really want to vibe off of that. You could also do what Sam did last week, which is raise your hand very politely like a schoolboy. So whatever works for you. If you want to just chime in. Actually, Yeatle, you got something immediately you want to say? Or
yeah. One more thing, because Salt mentioned supports being a bit of a problem. I think another really good example of like you can't outplay this is again Kiriko cleanse. Like if you go in for an engage, let's say you land a pin, you calculated it perfectly, or you go for a pile driver as ball, that gets cleansed, and all of a sudden your value as a tank is gone. You're either feeding or like you're gone for the next 20 seconds. So I think that's another like, how am I supposed to outplay that? So yeah, sorry.
No, appreciate it. Yeah, it's like it's turning into therapy session here. Like, what am I supposed to do, man? And kind of Yeatle and Salt have kind of alluded to this as like a legacy of switching over from 6v6. Flash, you're in the same group chat I am, so you've seen Frito and Samito with lengthy paragraphs back and forth arguing for 6v6, 5v5, what's better, going at it. Do you think this is a 6v6 to 5v5 issue, or do you think it's just a balance that they can solve?
Dude, I literally have no dog in this fight. I think you asked me, you were like, oh, like someone said it, and I was like, honestly, I don't care. Like, I actually think there's no difference between 5v5 and 6v6 because we look at 6v6 with rose tinted glasses, but it got me a little bit thinking, right? And I kind of always work off this assumption that people are kind of dumb. And if you ask people what's the meta right now, most people are going to answer it's Orisa meta, right? Like people will say it's Orisa meta. Like that happens with everything, right? They always say whatever the main tank is. They never talk about everything else unless it's like hard dominating. Like we're talking like Widow is killing everybody. Like, oh, it's a sniper meta, right? Like other than that. So, it got me really kind of thinking even back to old Overwatch, right? Why is the reason we had roll queue? Well, the roll queue kind of came because one, the ranked experience was kind of, or just like playing the game was kind of shit because you'd get, those games where you had 6 DPS or 4 DPS and a Mercy. It was never a good time. And then before that, you kind of got bullied. Like someone got bullied onto playing Mercy every game during dive meta because you needed to have a Mercy during Moth meta. And then before that, we had Triple Tank, and Triple Tank was kind of made by Ana because Ana was so good. Yeah, Soldier was kind of good too. Like he was like the DPS. So you had the Triple Tank plus Ana Soldier kind of thing going on, but it was mostly Ana with like you had like Nano Boost that was really good. Lucio was still pretty good, but you had the synergy. And then past Goats, we got into the Orisa Hog meta, but like that quickly became double shield, but that was kind of reinforced by Bat Brig. And then later into the history of Overwatch, we ended up having that Zen Brig meta, which you played like Hog Ball / like Sig Ball / Hog Ball. but it was all dominated again by the Brig Zen. But no one ever thinks about that. Everyone always says it's the tanks. Like it's the first thing they always jump to is tanks. And you know, uh, my personal hot take is I don't even think Orisa's that strong right now. I think she's good, but the reason why she's good is because she's a fucking wall and she just stands there. And there used to be other things when a wall would just stand there. We'd go Winston, just fuck it, screw it, just go over the Orisa, ignore her. But you can't do that because you're gate kept by Bastion, you're gate kept by Brig. That's really good still. Anna's really good still. Lifeweaver actually is somehow, at least in ranked, like really hard to dive now because like he's got a million escape tools and just so much HP. The passive nerf didn't even feel like it did anything. Like it felt no different. Mercy's still okay. I wouldn't say Mercy's great, but like, you know, if we're talking about like going to kill a support, Mercy's kind of hard to kill a lot of time. We have, you know, they've all talked about Kiriko and all that stuff, but you know, that's kind of why we get into this meta where you sit there and play Orisa and just don't move and don't die because my hot take is that the way tank is balanced now is almost like old support philosophy, where you're basically supposed to be enabling people instead of being a playmaker. So the reason why you can't play anything other than Orisa right now is because you're not supposed to go make plays. You're supposed to stand there and wait like a good little tank player until eventually something gets close enough that you kill them, or their tank gets too antsy and feeds, or someone on your team makes a play. Right? So it's very weird. And I think that's why it's become more boring than anything. And very unfun and very unimpactful because when I actually do make plays, I'm more or less not really making a play. I'm just more punishing them for doing something stupid. And like that sucks because I don't feel like I'm doing anything. I feel like I have to wait for them to fuck up. Right? And it's like when you're playing a game of waiting for someone else to fuck up, that's how you get Lifeweaver at launch, where everybody sat there, like, you know, like the whole point of Lifeweaver was sitting there waiting to pull somebody. It's unfun and it's boring. But there's also another part of that where I think because tank players are kind of like the minority of the player base, there's not really a lot of them to talk about it. So we kind of get steamrolled and nobody cares about it, right? Because like the supports are really, really loud. Let's be honest with ourselves. Support players are very loud. DPS players are probably the majority. At least back in Overwatch 1 always was longest queue time, you know, most amount of players. So even though it's in a balanced spot, they probably have the most amount of players. We don't know what the player numbers are because Blizzard doesn't tell us that type of information. So by process of elimination, I assume tank players are probably in the minority here. So when you have less people and it's not as loud, our problems are going to kind of go under the radar a little bit more. Sorry, I guess I'm kind of rambling a little bit here. I'll wrap it up. But the point is, though, I don't think 5v5 or 6v6 really matters. I would honestly, maybe I'm in left field. What? Fuck it, let's go 4v4. One tank, 2 DPS, 1 support. The support gets to keep all of their tools, and then damage comes down, healing comes down. Everyone still has impact.
Wow, I did not think you'd come in and drop that. Okay, sorry. Who? Couple voices here. Who's trying to say something? Go ahead, Salt.
Yeah, on the point, like on Twitter, like supporters are crybabies, bro. All they do is like, you say one take and they get their whole personality hurt. It's like, go fuck yourself. You're a Mercy player, bro. Like, I don't care if I have a comment about your fucking character.
Yep, I had
We're getting personally invested.
Peace out. I didn't start that. I didn't initiate that.
I hate the fact that Anna is known as a skill hero. It's not. You spam your fucking nade and sleep from across the fucking map. You're dog shit at the game too. And it's very easy to heal and do damage. That's why it's been meta for 6 seasons in fucking Korea. Bap has 3 fucking health pools. Lifeweaver has every answer under the Bible. I'm pretty sure he's sent by fucking Jesus Christ himself. And the only character that's like somewhat balanced is probably Zen or fucking Lucio. And yeah, like us tank players, we just bend over and take it. That's all we do. We have a comment, it gets shut down every fucking time. And like, I agree with Flats. Well, I'm not sure about 4v4, but it would fucking help because, you know, supports have an answer for fucking everything. No matter what. No matter what I do, they just have an answer for it. It's just annoying that an ability can counter my ult every fucking time. But I can't do that as a tank. So it doesn't make sense, you know? But yeah.
Interesting. There's a couple different points there. One is the kind of actual just a player-based minority issue, right? Which is what Flats alluded to as well, is that tanks have always been historically just the least number of players, and so there's a feeling here amongst the squad that the feelings of the minority are being ignored. Salt?
Sorry, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like I've heard this this comment. Oh, tanks are not meant to kill. Tanks are not meant to, make plays. They're meant to make space. Who the fuck wants to log onto a game and make space for it as a game?
No, that's
Like,
because people are
what?
dumb though. That's how you make space is you have to be threatening.
Yeah, it's
Not
like I gotta be
threatening.
like,
That's not
hey,
space.
hey, focus me. That's my gameplay, bro. Like, come on, man. Like, get real. Like, what kind of? It's a fucking game. I don't want to make space. I want to make plays with my team. Do this, kill this. Be able to, kill something myself. So yeah, I think anyone that says tank is only for space making is just brain dead.
Problem with tank and support is that, like, remember initially when Overwatch 2 launched, everyone's like, oh, support's the weakest role to just get dove and die off of cooldown.
Yeah.
And there were people out there. I'm gonna ego trip here. I was one of those people. Overwatch League helped because we had beta and alpha access and a lot of practice on it. But we're like, yo, no, support's strong. You just gotta shift your mindset away from pumping, healing up, your tanks. But you gotta take space and take angles and take duels. And then what's happened is that, like, that plus a tiny little bit of support creep, power creep, has kind of kicked in, and supports it's been like really a survival of the fittest for supports. You either learn how to DPS or you die. You go back to bronze. That's all there is. So what we've had happen is that supports have learned how to play Overwatch 2, and supports now have this new identity where, like, now I am a playmaker. Now I am able to take and win duels. But yet tank still feels like it's you take space. You don't have that identity anymore. So it's like now supports have this new identity of, like, more responsibility to take care of themselves and to make plays themselves. But tanks don't have that identity anymore. They've lost a lot of that damage. They've lost a lot of that lethality. And Salt's right. Like, you can't make space consistently without threat. And the problem is that you can make space by threatening kills as a Winston and jumping backline and forcing Wraith and turret form and nade and sleep. And your team may or may not win the fight off of that. But it feels terrible. It feels terrible because the lethality of your jump, there is no nuance to it. You force the cooldowns and you have to wait it out, and you force cooldowns and you wait it out, and you force cooldowns and you wait it out, and there never is very rarely will be a switch from I'm getting indirect value to where I'm actually getting direct value and securing kills. Whereas with support, that switch can happen very quickly. You hit a sleep dart, you hit a nade, and all of a sudden you're the one popping off. And I think with a hero like Orisa, like what Flats is saying, Orisa, I wouldn't say is a more effective tank than any of the other tanks. She just feels better because you're not constantly, you have tools to deal with the CC. You still absorb it. You don't have the mobility and even really the range to consistently actually punish backliners and supports and DPS, but it feels great. Even the dopamine of hitting a javelin's the stupidest CC in the game. They got the hitbox of a Mack truck, but it feels awesome. And so I might lose the game, but I've got all the stats. I have low deaths. I felt awesome and had a great time doing it. And I don't have the enemy tank chasing me around the map like I would if I was playing Winston or Ball or Ryan.
I love it. Yeah, I was gonna go to Spilo next anyways, but I'm really grateful for that input. Yeatle, you've been silently listening to these complaints for a little bit. Do you have anything you want to vibe off of this feeling that, like, no one wants to log in and just take space, and that's yet what's being asked of tank players?
Yeah, I mean, for this one, I think we're mostly in agreement. Like, there's not too much more to say other than support is literally tank, DPS, and support all in one. Like, they can take space, they can win DPS duels, and it's true. It's just true. I mean, some of us are Flats. You're playing support, aren't you? You've been playing them a lot more.
I mean, dude, I'm somehow like GM 3 or something in GM 1 last season on support. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. The characters play themselves half the time, but
Exactly.
I don't want to say that because people get really upset. And
no, they really do.
There's still, there's still people that come after me and say that support is weak right now, like this season or last season.
They're smoking.
And
they're smoking.
I have that larger casual audience. If you're talking like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, stuff like that. And it's like they do genuinely still believe that their role is weak. And as somebody who very early on in like Overwatch, like the betas to like launch Overwatch, I also said like, hey, like support has to do a lot, and it felt like it was weak. And I was someone who advocated that support probably needed a little bit of help. Now, Spilo, I think is actually totally 100% spot on that they need to relearn the game. And tank also had to relearn the game, but we had like giga buffs right at the start. Like I don't know if I've even met a tank player that hasn't said, maybe except ball players actually, to be fair, that the first beta of Overwatch 2 didn't feel awesome. Like it was like awesome. It was a power trip simulator. It was great. Now I understand it had to come back a little bit, but like that was kind of like the feeling of, okay, like I can make space, I can be threatening, I can make plays, and it felt good because towards the end of Overwatch 1, that was kind of slipping a little bit. Because like Zen Brig was really strong, Bat Brig was still really strong, so it was like a good time. But ever since then, it's just been sliding downhill. And then somewhere around the season 2 area, maybe into season 3, like support was like really strong now. It's like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Like it's like we've done enough buffing at this point. And then on top of that, people learned how to play the role as well. So now you have like people got better and got a bunch more stats. And there was never like a comeback down of that. And even if you look back at actually old numbers, like if you look back at like the old numbers of Overwatch 1 for like healing and stuff like that, they're all significantly higher than they used to be. And that is with supposedly less damage in the game because there's a whole less role.
Yeah.
Like when you remove an entire tank out of each game, there should be less damage across the board. Now, of course, we didn't have scoreboards in Overwatch 1, so we can't really like go back and like compare numbers to prove that. Maybe Overwatch League has like statistics saved somewhere that like, you know, could have been used. But other than that, though, it's everything. It's like a culmination of things, and I feel like crazy because I watched this happen 5 years ago, like where everything was kind of getting power crept. Plus, but now we just have new problems, plus power creep, plus all these other things, and it's just like maybe I'm a little bit cynical. I've just like kind of given up. I don't know. Like the way we're kind of going, I don't see a way out.
Yeah.
Damn.
But
Go ahead,
my
Ian.
point in bringing it up is, so you've been playing a lot more support. I've literally only played support this season. And I think a couple other tank players. Is Boger playing support? I know he went on a Lifeweaver trip for a while.
He's been
There's a
playing a
lot
fair
of tank
amount.
players going support. Support's a pretty good role. I won't even lie to you. And just to add to the point that I think support's probably a bit busted is when Kiriko came out, I played Kiriko. I never really played support before. I've always been, I guess, ball player, but tank mostly. I literally got rank 15 like the first week playing Kiriko. And then now Lari's come out and I'm up there for like top 50. Like the supports for the most part, and that's not even me taking like DPS duels or anything like that. It's me literally just heal botting. Like you could just heal bot and win games. It's crazy. It's mostly just live. But yeah, that's all I want to say.
No, I mean, it's
I'd be surprised if you got that high heal botting. I'm not gonna lie. I
promise you. I could show you my
Fine.
stats on Kiriko.
I'll take your word for it because I feel like there are a lot of players where whether you're DPS or tank, there is a little bit of survivorship bias where like the Defran effect is what I call it, where like this support character is easy because I have like the aggressive mindset to be able to do damage and win duels. And if you're picking Kiriko and you're hard flanking, you're basically playing the hero 85% of how it should be played anyway, right? So like, of course, you're gonna have an easier time. Whereas all these Plat Mercy mains and Lucio mains and Ana mains from Overwatch 1, that's totally that's a different language. That's not how they speak, and so they, like I said, survival of the fittest. So
I'll say one thing. In the lower ranks, I was more inclined to DPS, but like once you get the GM,
Right.
I can literally just heal the entire time. I can pump out like 2k damage on Kiriko or Lari and just win the game, just like that.
That's wild.
Like all you need to do is just not die and heal people, and hit your ability. That's it.
This is very interesting. I want to quickly say here, firstly, for any support players listening, next week we'll have a great support debate. So if you're sitting here and you're like, man, these fucking tank players just blaming on the support, well, there'll be a chance for support players to voice their grievances and their feelings next week. But
and
also,
I will say,
yeah, go ahead, Spilo.
can I interject? I don't think the problem is necessarily that the support identity is bad right now. The fact that they can DPS and defend themselves and heal. I think I'm like, as somebody who really started playing support, and that was the hero, the rank that I got to with Grandmaster, the role, excuse me. I think the identity is good. I think the more you have to have it, there's no off tank, there's nobody else to control space. You have to control space. You have to defend yourself. You have to contribute. The problem is just the quantity, the amplitude, right? It's just a little too high. It's not the amount of healing. It's not the healing or the damage or the CC or the utility. It's the fact that they can do all of it at the same time. It's just a little too high. And I think as the players have evolved and gotten better at doing those things, we should then scale back how much help is needed, because I don't think the help is needed as much anymore. I mean, people, just the support passive alone was like almost an afterthought when it was released. Like it was like, okay, that's pretty helpful. It's a quality of life for Ana and Brig, but now we're like, oh my gosh, this is actually so busted, right? And I think just like as our evolution of understanding the game and executing the game has evolved, I think you also have to scale back. Like, does Baptiste need, like we said, does he need lamp, and does he need shift, and do we need the burst heal for armor pack, and do we need this, and do we need that? Like, there's a lot of like case by case basis that you need to go through and be like, is this necessary anymore now that we've actually leveled up our play?
Hello guys, SEB here, and the Group Up podcast is back, and I'd like to take just 30 seconds of your time to talk to you about two quick things. Firstly, Patreon. If you enjoy the content, then please do consider supporting directly, because Patreon takes only about 10% of the money you give, where YouTube and Twitch take 40 and 50% respectively. So if you'd like to support the podcast, then that is the best way to do so. Secondly, if you're someone who enjoys video essays or detailed analysis of movies, TV, or anime, then please do check out my second channel, The Soak, where I'll be making videos about those kind of topics much more frequently, and where a lot of my attention will go beyond just Overwatch. It would mean the absolute world to me if you guys would check it out, but that's it for now. Let's head back to the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I also
Right.
want to clarify, I don't think it's completely tank sucks because of support. I think it's probably like a third of the problem, maybe half of the problem. I think there's more stuff that are like problematic. Like I mentioned, snipers, Sombra, etc.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with DPS, it's like they're good because they're able to swap and fuck a tank, you know?
Yes.
Like
That's
it's
the problem.
like it's not that much of an issue. I don't think DPS is. I think it's a good role right now. I don't think it's completely OP, but the fact that they can rock paper scissors is what makes DPS actually a decent role. I just want to say, like, if tanks had a quarter of what a support had as an ability, that people would bitch about it. I remember, I'm not going to say a name. I remember when JunkerQueen came out, and a certain streamer was crying that JunkerQueen had anti-nade on their ult. And they were like, oh, support should only have anti-nade. This shouldn't be given to a tank. It's like, what? And then another example, I'm going to talk about Hog. Hog didn't need to get his one-shot nerf. There was many answers to Hog, right? And it was Kiriko that was the problem, because she would just, nade, make me invulnerable, cleanse me, save me every time. But what did they nerf? They nerfed Hug. Now let's look at Alari. Oh my god, her ult. Don't nerf her ult. Don't nerf this about her, because there's already many answers to her ult, such as cleanse, such as eats. But it's the same with Hog. What answers you had for Hog is the same answers you had for Alari ult. So why the fuck are we nerfing Hog but not Alari? You get what I'm saying here? It's like very like
The Hog one's
not-
kind
not
of
even
easy for
too-
cleanse. Because, like, so what would you have done to cleanse then to make it better?
cleanse, I guess. Just have a cleanse not make you invulnerable. Especially, I think how I would have nerfed Kiriko myself is when she TPs, she can't cleanse herself with a TP. And for her, in order to TP, she shouldn't be able to. Let's say she's taking damage, right? She can't TP unless the damage stops within a second. So therefore, there's this like.
Wouldn't that feel terrible though to
interaction.
play?
I mean, you have another support to help you, and it stops you from making hero plays and carrying the game like a DPS tank and a support at the same time.
Is there any character that takes damage and their ability gets turned off in the game already?
Well, yeah, Sombra.
Well,
But like,
interrupts
I'm trying to say, what Sombra?
Like
Hack.
they go to hack onto you, and then you
You
can
use
interrupt
damage.
it. So like that's you counterplaying their thing.
Ability.
I
But
wouldn't
what I'm
say,
trying
like-
to say is,
Yeah.
1 second, let me finish, and then you can say what you have to say. But yeah, she should be able to cleanse herself and then TP, because she can't take damage during that cleanse. So then she would be allowed to TP, right? So therefore, you can actually infinitely force both abilities instead of, oh, she TP'd. Find her again. Oh, cleanse. Guys, Kira, she TPs again. It's like, what the fuck is that? Now, on top of that, she has another support hero to help her. Why do I have to go to the fucking moon and back to get one support? Especially, like, Mercy. Why the fuck has she got a wang ability? Like, why is it not one direction? Like,
Okay.
how does that make sense for me?
They gave her tap
So-
strafe.
So I'm gonna like just rein it back in a little bit and try and bring our
sorry, my
focus
bad.
back. No, I want you guys. It's my job to sort of to direct it. So you go whatever you want to go, and I'll let you guys know when we're going too much in one way. So yeah, I think we've kind of alluded to where the power of certain supports is frustrating for tanks. I think that the point that I want to focus on is the interesting one that Spilo made of like, and I think Flats made it earlier as well, where it's like, well, we've shifted from having an off tank or a second tank, and that power has kind of been distributed. And then you guys are all saying that you feel like the support role has inherited a lot of that power, where they're now support, DPS, and tank. But is that in some ways what we want every hero to be able to do? Like every role to be able to do is kind of like, that was kind of the promise of Overwatch 2, wasn't it? That like everyone can carry and pop off, and you don't have to worry about your teammates because, you know, that in Overwatch 2 it's all open to you. But it sounds like you guys feel that that's not actually open to tank, that your ability to try and pop off is so muted most of the time you're just trying not to die.
I mean, to
And a
be
lot
fair,
of the.
sorry,
Go ahead.
man, you go.
No,
Well, I was
you're
gonna
good.
say, like, if you wanted to make balance changes to certain tanks, you could add a self heal or I know this is like ridiculous to say, but invulnerability. For example, Winston. You know, if we're gonna allow supports to have 2 escapes, why the hell does Winston not have 2 jumps? Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's, but then like you guys are like, oh my god, I should be able to survive my own. No, you shouldn't. If a tank wants to go for you, you should have help from your team to survive that. You shouldn't be able to outplay me because you're in the sky flying away, or you TP through walls every time. But yeah, that's just my opinion.
I think
So
the problem
Spilo,
is
go
like
ahead.
ease of application is the problem. I think it's like it's how easy it is to do a lot of these things, which makes it really difficult. And I also think that going to really Yeatle's shout out to the Wrecking Ball video, which I really enjoyed. It's some things just haven't aged as well in Overwatch 2. Like certain design aspects haven't aged as well. Like we have too many tanks that have aspects that aren't as useful, that aren't as dynamic. Like think about what Reinhardt, as bad as Reinhardt has felt at times, at least the pin change happened and the double fire strike, and that's kept him relevant. Imagine Reinhardt with Overwatch 1 charge. Awful, like unplayable, right? Even Winston with the right click. Zarya is still not the best, but at least she's got more options with her bubbles. And then there's heroes like Ball. What does Ball have to deal with CC, right? He doesn't have the second tank to pull attention elsewhere. It's just the Ball, right? And so there's too many characters, tanks specifically, in Overwatch 2 that haven't received enough changes to be able to deal with more of the attention, whether that's more dynamics with range. I'm a big mobility creep guy. I think mobility creep usually, if we're going to have any type of creep, a little bit of mobility creep is good. But I think like that's the problem, right? Is you don't have ways of counterplaying and avoiding things. And I think that's why it feels so bad. And then the last thing on top of that is that a lot of the times when it comes to why the other reasons besides support, why tank can feel really bad is the same thing. It's the Overwatch 1 designs, but it's the DPS designs that are problematic. We don't need Bastion anymore. We don't need Bastion turret anymore. I don't know why that hero exists with the turret, the damage that he does. Why is that a thing? We don't have 2 tanks to bust through anymore. Why is like obviously Reaper is a big one. Like the guy I played Reaper the other day. It was it Shambali, 3rd point attack. Just for fun, quick play, It was miserable because they didn't have the tank that I could shoot. It's too open. My mobility sucks. My teleporter sucks. But then if I'm playing into a Winston that's playing on like Oasis University, it feels ridiculous. It's so easy to exist and get value with a character. And you've got Junkrat that kind of falls into that to a lesser extent. Snipers, as Yeatle was talking about. I think Pharah, Torbjorn. There's a lot of characters in Overwatch 2 that are just as one-dimensional as they were in Overwatch 1. And those happen to be the characters that feel really, really bad for tanks to deal with, whether it's I can't reach that character or that character just melts me by just existing, or that character rock, paper, scissors me and just it takes no skill. It's the cheese aspect. And I think, as annoying as characters like Sojourn can be at times, at least there's some sort of dynamic there. They're not just one thing, I exist to make your life miserable. Sojourn with a mercy pocket, that's a different story.
Great take. I think really well explained. I think one thing that we're seeing here is the hangover of not actually paying enough foresight into what will happen when we switch over to 5v5. And I think that myself and others, when we did switch over to 5v5, we were all kind of like, wow, this is actually surprisingly good, right? It was like we thought it would require more changes because what they showed us was not a lot. To be frank, I'm not trying to be mean to the devs or whatever, but like when they switched over, they didn't actually do that much in terms of changes. They were like, we got a Sombra rework and a Bastion rework, guys. We're reworking the Sombra again. The Bastion rework, we see how that went. Orisa rework, whatever. Everyone still hates her, right? So we did like these few things, but we never really fundamentally addressed the role or anything like that. And when we launched, because the tanks were giga buffed, as Flat said, supports felt upset. They got their buffs, right? And they got their buffs instead. But now we're seeing that lack of addressing the fundamental issues kind of tear at the seams, I think, because now we've given supports multiple buffs, and on top of that, we gave them new heroes. I think is another element that we haven't necessarily mentioned yet, but I almost wonder, you know, the state of support at the start of launch of Overwatch 2, people would have probably just generally felt better had there been more, like, had we launched Kiriko, Lifey, Reliari, because part of the complaints was, well, I only have, you know, 5 or 6 supports to play, and they get hard dove. But now if you'd had Kiriko, you had Lifeweaver, who's like immune to diving as well quite a lot, and you have Iliari, who's just a cannon in herself, you probably wouldn't have seen those same complaints. So we've almost kind of, I fear the devs have kind of overcompensated a little bit from what the feedback they got early, without actually holistically addressing the problems that would inevitably come when we've made such a big change. It's not really even talked about. We made such a big change, but we didn't make big changes to the game to match that, I think. So I think that what we're seeing is like, that's tearing at the seams, and at some point we need to find an answer. That's kind of why I brought you guys on the call, because I'm like, well, who's got the answer? Like, who's got the ideas for like how we repair this moment? That's kind of where it feels like tank is breaking apart almost. Like, I don't want to see another Overwatch 1 moment where it's just like tank user instant, because nobody ever wants to play this role, and they're like, it's so miserable and the reputation of it is so bad that the role just deads, right? And then what did we do? We had to remove a tank to try and fix that. So I brought the squad here, the brain trust here. One more word before we'll get into the tanks itself, but one more word, because we've alluded to it, but the DPS role. We've talked a lot about supports, but Yeatle, you probably have something to say about, for example, the ability for someone to switch to Sombra and kind of make your life miserable. Like, do you feel like there's the DPS role, but also the counter swapping that we haven't directly talked about as well?
Right. So I think the problem is there's a lot of things that that you can't outplay, and if you can't outplay it, I think it's broken. So, for example, what I said earlier about Sombra basically hacking you in Viz, you can't really. It happens so quick that it's really hard to react to and stop the hack, and I think that is problematic for example tanks like Ball or Doomfist. I played Doomfist recently, and it actually wasn't that bad, but Ball is really bad where you just get hacked going for an engagement. But not only that, snipers, for example, like if you're playing any of the tanks that don't have a shield, for example, Zarya, how's your team going to take space and rotate on Havana when they have a Widow on the high ground? If you don't have the better Widow, you don't. And I feel like a lot of the problem is just those problem DPS. There's also the problem supports, but since you asked about DPS, I think it's snipers and I think it's Sombra. You get rid of those and the game becomes a lot more fun, in my opinion, except for the people that play the snipers. Because my hot take is long range one shots don't belong in the game. I don't know how they'll balance Widowmaker. They could probably do a Hanzo not having a one shot, but like I don't think it belongs in the game, because before anything else, Overwatch is a strategy game. And how do you play around the long range one shot with one tank? It's really hard. So that's basically my argument.
Flats, I'm curious on your take on this, because you're kind of, I really feel you going through the
don't-
emotions right now.
God, okay. First off, I think I'm going crazy. Like, actually, because we I think we had this exact discussion like in this spot about 2.5 years ago, when we were talking about post roll queue and how we were promised all these characters going to get changes after roll queue, and it never happened. And then we got to 5v5 and it never happened. And it's like, how many more times is this going to happen? Oh God. Anyways, existential crisis, I guess, going on over here. But
I feel
the
that
reason
on
why
the daily.
the reason why I kind of disagree with it is because I don't actually think Overwatch is a strategy game. I know that's kind of like how it's become, but that's why Goats was so bad. To like, okay, don't get me wrong, Goats, if it was only for a little bit, would have been super fun and people enjoyed it, and it was some of the most fun Overwatch I've ever played, and it was super complex at the high level, and like you could lose games off of a single cooldown, and to like giga nerds like us, that was awesome. But to the average player, it was awful, and like there were so many things wrong, like fundamentally. Like the DPS role disappeared for like 2 years. You could have Dante on Tracer getting outplayed by a 2,200 gold Brig player who somehow managed in 1 week to get to top 500. Do you guys remember that? Remember that guy? Yeah, that guy's outplaying Dante on Tracer. So we've had all these things like kind of come through, but like the average player for Overwatch wants this game to be an FPS game. They just don't want it to be Valorant FPS game. But so like you need things like snipers, right? Like one shots are what are part of FPS games, and it's not a bad thing. But I also agree with you in that, like, there are problem characters, and it's like got to the point where there's just so many things that are like piled up. And I think May is coming around. Remember May was like kind of strong, but like not really at the same time. So then they took her damage down, but then gave her more CC, and now like she's like slowly getting more damage. We're gonna come full circle, and she's gonna get like damage back and CC. It's coming. I talked about it like a month ago. It's definitely gonna come. Then we have Bastion, which just blows up like half the tanks, and then especially like Winston. Like Winston is like the keystone to this game right now. And like when Winston's playable, a lot of the tanks are playable, because like not when Winston's OP dominant, right? Like in Overwatch League that might be different, and like high level play, like Winston might be more dominant than like in ladder. But like there's so many, like we talked about rock paper scissors, there's so many counter picks and so many things that it's like almost like we're back in goats, where like it's better just walk out on Orisa, because you're gonna get forced onto it anyways by other picks. So you just walk out on goats right away, because like, yeah, you could run something else, but like what's the point? Because if they walk out on goats, you go back into spawn, you swap anyways. So I don't know, like I think the reason why Overwatch 2 felt so good when it came out is because it felt like an FPS game, and it felt like you could shoot people, and it didn't feel like you were shooting shields all day long, because that's what the most FPS players hated about Overwatch 1 was the like stacks of shields, and you'd sit there and hit your buttons for 10 minutes until the shields finally break, and then woo, you get to shoot 2 bullets, and then oh, that shield's back. So I agree with you, but like this is what kind of why like early on I said we're kind of like just screwed. I don't see a way out at this point. Like we're so twisted up in this at this, like someone has to fall, and I think we know who has been chosen as the fall man, and it's the lowest population of players, because let's remember at the end of the day, this is a for-profit company that wants to make money. And if the support players and DPS players are the highest groups, and I'm sure they have data that shows who buys the most skins, and I have this weird suspicion that I'd probably support players buy the most skins. Keep them happy, keep the DPS players happy, tank players, smallest population. Sorry, you're just gonna have to bite the bullet on that one.
Very
Maybe
cynical.
for
Very
psychology.
cynical. Go ahead. Sorry.
Maybe for psychology, just like I don't know, like do people enjoy swapping Bastion, Reaper, Torbjorn? Like at the end of the day, I mean,
I think
obviously
people
on
enjoy
some
winning. They enjoy winning.
Winning is the key,
right.
though.
No, I get that, but my point being is that like the irony is that like if you play Winston really well versus counters or whatever, you can still win. It just feels terrible, right? The question is does it feel as bad for the other end? Did they still feel like my favorite part is jumping the backline, the Reaper's chasing me across the map? It probably doesn't feel great for him, but he feels like that's what I have to do. So I wonder with like so many of these cheese things, whether it's like, sleeping this or discording that or going Reaper, Bastion or going, is it almost like where like if any sort of proper balance makes it more fun for the other side as well? Because Flats is right. It's like Tank's a minority, and it's always going to be a minority. I think obviously there's been a little bit of a content drop for Tank recently, which is fair. But could it be also that if we just made these tanks or these DPS and support characters less valueful? Remember the tier list we did years ago, SVB, value floor, value thing? If we made some of these tweaks here, would it feel just as good for the people getting tweaked as it is for the tanks that have to deal with the tweaks?
So I want to say something quick, then I want to let Yeatle talk, because Yeatle had something to say. But I think to your point about what does it feel as good, I think what feels good is autonomy in your video game. I think that's what those players have that the tank players don't. Because if you're the one who swapped Reaper, you feel like you have it in your power to win this game, right? If you're like, oh shit, their Winston's rolling us, I can go Reaper. And even if you have to chase that guy across the map, at the end of it, you're like, I beat him, therefore I win, and therefore I am in control of winning my game. As opposed to the tank player who's like, okay, I'm trying to play really well, but even if I play really well, this guy's going to do this and chase me around, and I lose control of my character. Sometimes literally, you lose control of your character, and sometimes metaphorically, you kind of lose control.
But why is it autonomy for countering the enemy tank and not the enemy DPS and supports? You know, why is it always the tank that?
Because it's
I
the
swear
one guy.
there's something psychological, you know, like
There is.
because if I, that's the thing. Because if
Have
I
you
go Reaper,
noticed-
do I not enable the enemy DPS to supports to do whatever they want? And that's exactly how you win games, by playing into counters. It's just enabling your team to do whatever they want because they're so busy chasing you. But what is with it with like the Overwatch 2 player psychology to where like that's the play, you know? Like, because the funny thing is in lower and mid ranks, which that's my expertise. I coach all ranks, right? Bronze, silver, gold, platinum. There is more tank focus in lower ranks than there is in higher ranks because that's all they know how to do. And that's why you see more Orisa and more Ramattra and less Winston and more Reaper and more Bastion and Torbjorn. Part of that is because, as we've already established, those characters are freaking easy to play. It's just how it is. There's value in skill ceilings, of course, but it's just significantly lesser than any other character.
Can
But
I
the
ask
other
you
thing
something?
is it feels easy. Yeah.
So my question to you is because like this is like your specialty, like this is what you know. Have you noticed, and this is kind of my assumption, have you noticed that almost all the metal rank players know the counters? They know everything.
yeah.
Like they know,
Oh, yes.
they know, they go Winston, you go Bastion, right?
Yes.
Nobody knows the opposite. Like you
No.
see a backline with a Brig, like you probably play Ryan into that. If they're frontlining on Brig, I walk in on Ryan and just two tap him. Like what are you doing? But they don't know the reverses. They have no clue. They
No.
only know how to counter the tank, but nobody knows the reverse. And it's like, I think you're right. I think there is some psychology with it. And I think it's easier because it's only one person versus two. And so it's like, yeah,
Exactly.
they have a Brig. I could probably walk over them with Ryan because we have a Lucio. But they also have a Kiriko, and I'm scared of that. And I don't know how to beat that. Like, you know, it's like,
yeah. And the thing with Brig is there's at least two things you could be doing at all time. You could play a little bit more brawl focused, shield bash out. You could control an angle, control a flank. You could play anti-dive. And that dynamic is very important because that prevents her from being an OTP. She could do multiple things. And that when you have characters that don't have that dynamics, that's when you start to have the rock, paper, scissors.
I want to take it to Yeatle because Yeatle had something he wanted to say. Yeatle.
It's actually a little bit further back into what we were talking about,
Go for
but
it.
I think Overwatch is a strategy game before an FPS game compared to all the other FPS games. Like it's not even close to like the strategy aspect of it. But I also think that you can still take 1v1s and that FPS aspect is still there. However, specifically what I was talking about are one shots being Widowmaker, Hanzo, Sojourn with a mercy damage boost. I think those things are like there's only so many heroes in the game that can actually beat that, right? And I think the only like other hero other than like playing Widow back, playing Hanzo back, is the tank. If that tank picks the specific tank, like, hey, we're gonna go Reinhardt and we're all just gonna run to this left side or whatever it is. I think the problem is how hard it is to outplay that for most of the heroes in the game. That's
I
what
think
I
it's
want to say.
both. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, it does take a little bit strategy and FPS to achieve what you want. But tank is like the least rewarded for having good aim as well. Because if I hit every shot on Sigma, it doesn't fucking matter. If you're a Mercy in the Sky healing, you can out heal me. Even if I land every shot. You know, it goes hand in hand with both. But yeah, the rock, paper, scissors. I guess people just do it because you know tank is just the easiest target to shoot because you know we're the biggest, and it's very easy because I've got like 300 games this season, and I tell you at least 4 people counter me every time. I swap, boom, they swap. I swap, boom, they swap. Like literally after every death, and it's just the worst fucking thing ever. It's just horrible. Yeah.
I think you're also Schumer's was a little bit worse than the average player,
mean,
but I agree.
Yeah, that's true.
It's bad even in quick play. Even in
No,
quick
it's-
play, like
it
that's
is,
basically
right.
all I do. Like people are like so sweaty and weird with it that like I Orisa Reaper Bastion's chasing me around the map just because I want to play Winston. And again, I can still win the game, but it's just not as fun. It's just not as fun.
I mean, for sure, there are ways of playing against it, but at the end of the day, if 4 or 5 people want you dead, they're gonna get you. Doesn't matter how safe you play, they're eventually gonna get you, and then it's very easy for them to get you, considering they're playing, you know, the advantage.
So you guys are giving some hot takes. I'll give a potential hot take before we head into, because I want to talk about specifics on tank and you know like each of the characters. But I've been playing a lot of Dota recently. Fitzy was here in chat earlier. Me and him duo Dota like every night after I stream. We play some games. I tried to get Yeatle into it, but he's a League of Legends player, and it was too like he was like, "What is going on, man? I don't know what's going on." And the tank problem is universal across most games, right? Like in almost every game, nobody really wants to play tank because absorbing stuff for others is shitty, right? And it feels kind of bad. But I think that's interesting that a lot of the discussion has come around, well, tank is the one compared to the other roles who have duos. So like that's why they will always suffer. Like they will always be the role that's most miserable. But what's interesting is that that's not necessarily the case in other games where like there's the one person who's burdened with something. So to give the MOBA example, like you'll have in Dota the safe lane. I think in League of Legends it's called the ADC. Yeatle, correct me if I'm wrong. The carry, right? The carry role.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, ADC.
ADC, right? So the job of this hero, for those who are unfamiliar with MOBAs, is basically like the rest of everyone is going to enable you for the first like 15, 20 minutes of the game, right? Your job is to get farmed up, to get a bunch of items because there's money in MOBA. So you got to get lots of money, and you're basically babysat for the first 15, 20 minutes. There's even, in Dota, there's what's called a hard support. So there's support and there's hard support, and then there's your safe lane, there's your mid, and there's your off lane. Your off lane is your tank, mid lane's your like mid lane. So there's a literal job of the hard support to make your life easy as the safe lane. Now there's a lot of pressure on the safe lane, but the responsibility is, the trade-off is, well, if we spend 15 minutes pocketing you, at the end of the game, you got to carry us. You got to be the guy who wins the game for us. So that's a lot of pressure, right? It's a lot of pressure that the entire end game comes down on you. And if you look at other things, it's not necessary that the person who has a lot of pressure is the person who's also the most miserable. Actually, usually it's the opposite. Usually that's the star player, right? The star player, if you look at, for example, real sports, I don't know American stuff, guys, so I'm sorry, but Salt will feel me when I talk about football. It's like everyone wants to be the striker, right? Everyone wants to be the guy who's scoring goals. Nobody wants to be the goalkeeper. That's like, you eventually convert to being a goalkeeper later on when you're a kid, because like nobody wants to be that guy. Nobody wants to be the defenders. Everybody's like, I want to score goals. I want to be the hero. Why is Overwatch so different in that way? Why is it that like the one role that's like the most pressure is also the most miserable? Why is tank not the star role, right? Like why is the game not be made in a way where if we're going to ask this one role to bear the burden of like, you must dictate the engagements, you must eat all the crap for the rest of your teammates, why is it also like the least powerful role? Why is that not the star role? Why don't we want tank to be the role that everyone gravitates towards, where all the people who are like, oh, I want to be the carry, I want all the glory, go, be the tank, take all the pressure, but you get to decide the win too. Okay, that's the trade-off. Well, at the moment, it feels like the trade-off is you get fucked, and the best thing you get in return is a quick queue time. Like, that's it. You get blamed, you get focused, you get fucked. Okay, I guess we gave you a quick queue time in exchange. So, like, my hot take is, like, if we're going to go to 5v5, if we're going to make this one role have the pressure of two players and inarguably, like, the pressure of the entire lobby, then, okay, you should be the star then. You're the guy who's, like, really popping off. I'll drop it there. So anyone can chime in where they feel. Flats has been nodding with me, but maybe, maybe I'm talking to a biased crowd here. I'm preaching to the choir.
I mean, that was my take going into Overwatch 2, and everyone was like, oh, nerf the tanks. Like, no! Like, you guys are crazy! Like, yeah, like, this was the original argument back in the day. This was my actual argument when people were said support was weak. I said, bring support up. Don't bring tank down. That's gonna have the wrong effect. And it did! So, like, that's why I feel like I'm losing my mind, because all these things, it just ends up being a few months early. Like, I was back in season 4 saying like, hey guys, like tank's going downhill very quickly, and like we're seeing it, and I got waves of support players screaming like, you don't know anything, stupid tank player. And now here we are, right where I said we were gonna go, and it just gets tiring. Like I'm genuinely getting tired of it at this point. But you're completely right. But you want to know the answer? It's because people are so honed in on tank diffs. Ask any middle rank player. Every game they load up, somebody says tank diff. They can't see anything else. But meanwhile, you stick a GM DPS player in that game, I'm sure as shit that tank ain't gonna do a damn thing. Like, they're just gonna kill everyone. Same thing if you put a support player in. And it's like everyone's so obsessed with it because it's the big HP target that's running at you. And in season 1, it was Zarya originally, and everyone hated Zarya. And everyone was like, oh my god, this character is going to kill us all. And she was, right? But like that was because Zarya being really strong also had some other things with it. Like, support was like kind of starting to catch up. Like Kiri was good, and that was what ended up happening with Hog. Now, Salt said earlier that the one shot for Hog wasn't actually the problem. And actually, in some ways he might be right. But the problem is though, is we have this problem in Overwatch, and it's really bad. And it's the hero's fantasy. And they will not touch heroes past the hero's fantasy. It's the same like reason why Sojourn didn't get nerfed or one shot for the longest time. Sojourn still kind of has a one shot with a Mercy Pocket. Like we just don't talk about it that much because she's not that strong right now. But like there's always the hero's fantasy that's playing into it. And I don't think there would have been a world where they would have nerfed Suzu the way that Salt was saying before. Like it just wouldn't happen. And so maybe it even goes all the way back to a design philosophy, because we create these heroes with cool mechanics or cool things. We don't think about the after effect of how they interact with other characters in the game, and we can't get rid of that. So we've had this problem over time of like characters getting introduced and they have some cool shtick to them, but like we don't think about how it's going to affect the rest of the roster. And so Hog was unfortunately the martyr because you couldn't take away the hero fantasy of Kiriko. And unfortunately, so like Hog got put off into the ranch. And like there was nothing to do. Like that was legitimately, in my opinion, the correct answer. Like there was no other answer, which I'm saying was the best answer. There just wasn't a better one. And so we're gonna have that problem, and it's only gonna get worse as more characters come out, because there's just this this philosophy that will not change of one, like we have to keep the hero's fantasy for every character, and two, the balance is really bad. So like I don't know anymore.
So we will get to Hog in a moment. In fact, I might line up Hog or Bull. I'll get Hog or Bull early when we're gonna go over to talk about the heroes themselves. Spilo, any words from you on kind of just this whole wider issue here? Because you talk about this kind of stuff a lot on your content.
Yeah, I think there's like twofold with Tank. I think part of it is just I do think that there's a little bit of the MMO mindset with Tank, where it's the certain, I'm the beef, I'm the protector, I'm not exactly the DPS on the raid boss kind of a thing, right? So I do think that that's where maybe people get kind of the wrong impression, where we should be beating on Tank. Tank should be taking the beating, not necessarily doing a lot. And I think that's definitely flawed in the first person shooter. And I think that's always been Overwatch 2's tricky part, right? It's like it is a first person shooter. It's also a MOBA. It has like, I mean, it even has the MMO, right? Like the strict support, the strict tank rules. It's confusing. So there's a lot of baggage that comes along with that. And I also think that when it comes to like the fact that Tank has to deal with so much, I think is just simply the ease of application of so many of the worst. Like I said, Tank always interacts with the worst of what Overwatch has to offer, whether that's the sleep dart, nade, Discord orb, right? May, Cassidy. Like, for example, the Cassie grenade. Everyone was crying about Cassie grenade, and it got nerfed, it got nerfed, it got nerfed. Guess who the Cassie grenade still hurts really badly? Tanks. And the funny thing is, it's not even all the tanks, just a few of the tanks. Like Wrecking Ball completely shuts down Wrecking Ball. Maze Freeze, nobody likes Maze Freeze. Nobody wanted Maze Freeze. May didn't need the freeze. It was a nerf to Maze Freeze, except for Wrecking Ball, right? And or Diva, for example. So I think that what we need to do is you need to look at some of the Javelin, another Orisa Javelin, right? Just spam it on Tank, right? It's the ease of application problem, I think. And I think when we talk about tweaks, even if it's not like fixing systemically the problem like Flats is saying, maybe that's just unfixable. But keeping the game still fun, keeping it enjoyable to an extent, I think you have to look at how some of these abilities interact with tanks. And they did it with Sleep Dart, and I think you have to keep looking.
Okay, I like that. Saul, I'm gonna give you first up, but before I do, Yeatle, any last words on the sort of the bigger picture before we start getting into the nitty gritty?
I think going into Overwatch 2, they wanted to make tanks like the superstar of the lobby. They didn't want to make tanks just we take damage and eat all the CC and stuff. I think it was just like there's so many heroes and so many different variables that they didn't get it all right the first time, and it's still taken them a while to get it all iron it all out. And I feel like it's you can go a couple different ways. Like I mentioned earlier, I think there's the broken aspects of things that you can't outplay. You can nerf those heroes, or you can go the other route of making the tanks able to outplay them better. Just to name an example, I know we're going to go into Hog soon, but like the Hog versus Ana interaction of sleep or anti getting you almost every time. What can Hog do about it? About not getting
Nothing.
slept or not getting antied? He can't do anything. In Overwatch 1, it wasn't as big of a problem because you could get Matrixed, you could get shielded. Your other tank exists. Right now, you got Cleanse, but that's it. You only have Cleanse. But yeah, that's my point. Either like you can start toning down all these heroes and how they're able to do these things, or you can start buffing the tanks or go back to 6v6. But yeah, that's all.
Many options, and I suppose that's the devil of the choice that the developers have to make. 4v4. Oh yeah, there's another option which is Flats. Is again, I'm very surprised he's come with this hot take now. He's like, drop the 4v4, let's go. Overwatch 3, the memes have begun again. Overwatch 3, when will it come?
Run it back.
Run it back, let's go. Okay, now let's talk specifically on all the tanks. And I'm gonna go to Roadhog first, just because not only because his Salt has been a very patient guy, he's been stewing, he's been cooking, he's got some shit to say. But also because Hog, we know, is going to get some reworks. And today in the developer blog, they mentioned, I can't remember the bullet points of exactly what they wanted, but I think they were basically like, oh, he needs to have more stuff that helps the team, and we're going to take some of the power away from just the one shot and give it elsewhere. So Salt, you're already shaking your head. Firstly, the state of Hog now, and any word on what you read about the rework?
Haven't seen much, but yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah, what you said is what I've seen, but see, the problem with
should you want me to read really quick what they said about
yes,
Hog?
please, yes.
Okay, so what they said is Roadhog is currently undergoing the finishing touches that will release with his rework in Season 7's mid-season patch. Our broad goals for his rework are as follows. 1. Increase his ability to protect his team and claim space. 2. Maintain his overall identity and playstyle. 3. Move some of his power around so that his effectiveness isn't so tied to his one-shot potential. So that's basically what we're going to expect from Hog.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. After the nerf, well, let me start off like this. You know how pretty much every tank you use as a tool, for example, you know, Reinhardt is a hammer and then Roadhog is a screwdriver. You know, like the way I'm going, like you use different tanks to deal with different situations. And I think in Season 2, I remember Soldier and Mercy meta. That was hell on earth for every tank. It was not fun being 2 tapped in the head, like bang bang, and you're dead. Doesn't matter what tank you're playing, you're dead. And the only necessary evil that existed was Hog, right? I think tank role should have a tank that is only for protecting your team and making space. Have another tank that, you know, supports your team as in like through heals or whatever, or bubbles them, you know, or have another tank that has good kill potential. Why do we need every tank to follow this rule of make space, hold space, make space, hold space? That makes no sense to me at all, especially when supports can do everything. But why can't I do everything too if I want to pick a different hero, you know? And I think the problem with Hog as well, first of all, Ana players who, you know, I think is very, very. I don't want to be mean to Blizzard because I actually like the game fundamentally. Like, don't get like if Blizzard watches it, I like the game. Like, I'm just gonna say I like the game fundamentally, but it's just horrible that Ana has 2 answers for one question. You know what I'm saying? Like, why does Hog have a heal that can be countered by sleep and nade? How does that make sense? I'm not talking about. There's a whole, like, you know, a cast of people that use abilities to counter too. Fair enough, whatever. But since Hog has lost his kill potential, right, the threat, there is no space making with him anymore. The only reason he's ever good is if you're playing Ilios well, you're playing certain maps. So I think, in general, I think it's a bad take to drive him towards a place where he just makes space and he's less one-shot orientated. I think it's really bad, actually, because we have tanks for that already. I think that they should, you know, give him back his kill potential, and he's fixed. I think, honestly, it's a skill issue for low elos if they complain about Hog. It is literally a skill issue. You can outplay Hog numerous ways: distance, positioning, jiggle, peeking, you know, baiting out hook. It's one ability. It's not that deep, bro. Like, stop crying about it. You've got plenty of supports. Life Weaver, you don't even have to aim. Click E, bro. As soon as I hook, click E. Boom. Answer, you know? So yeah, I think the fact that they've left Hog in this pit for so long, it's really embarrassing. Especially, it dropped off a lot of my friends, well, Hog players like Gibber. He doesn't play the game anymore because it was the character he loved. Like, I'm not saying make Hog OP, but make him viable, you know? Like, why, like, bro, they just, like, broke Hog's legs and just threw him in a ditch. Mafia style, you know? And then I'm just there like, oh, yeah, this is fun. But, yeah, I think the one-shot had a good threat. I guess, I don't know. The thing is, right now, another problem with Hog is his gun. I don't know if anyone plays Hog here, but his gun is very outdated. Like the projectile of it and how it works and how the shotgun works. If you're going to remove a one-shot from a character who has a shotgun, say, right, okay, then like you at least change the way his gun works. I haven't really thought about it. I don't know if they want to turn it into an SM, you know, like a minigun, like a heavy or whatnot. But it's just a very outdated M1 and M2. So yeah, that's what I have to say about Hog.
Yeah, I mean, I want to, I'll let the others come in. We'll come back to you on the Hog as well. But if anyone else has any thoughts of what Salt says, anyone been playing Hog recently? You want to admit to that openly?
No, I'm not crazy.
Yeah. I have
I don't know
morals,
if my
yeah.
parents will see this, so I can't say anything.
Yeah.
I think Roadhog is like just a classic example of like he does the thing, you know, and then either he does the thing and people hate it and he's meta, or he doesn't do the thing, and the Roadhog players cry because he's completely unviable. And I know this might be a little spicy, but I think that's why I think the design is flawed. I think like when you look at something like a Bastion, that's all he does is he turret form, he shoot. That's it. So if we're talking about nerfing turret form, widest character, all the Bastion means like what? If you do that, then you can't even play the character. That's my point. That's exactly my point. And I think the same thing goes with Roadhog. I don't think it necessarily needs to be, more enabler, team support, make space. Roadhog walks around with like a little PVC shield, you know. I don't think let him do his own thing. Let him find his own unique threat. Like look at JunkerQueen, right? Besides her AoE team speed, which to be fair is pretty useful, she does her own thing. You know, screw off. You know, like I'm doing my thing, right? Ramattra as well, right? You don't shield your team that much. It's more about I play for me. It's me. Like I create space by being a threat. But there's different ways that he's a threat. There's different utility that kind of works here and there. Hog, one shot, shoot you, and heal. That's it. Like there just isn't a lot to it. And I think that's part of the reason why he can feel either very, very powerful and very cheesy and anger inducing or terrible. Because either he one shots or doesn't. That there's no in between.
Yeah, it almost feels like JunkerQueen is like the evolved version of Roadhog, right? It's like a Pokemon evolution. Sure. It's like Roadhog evolved into JunkerQueen into Overwatch 2.
And by the way, mechanical expression, right? We talked about, I think it was Flats that talked about it. Not enough, somebody talked about it. It was not enough satisfying mechanical outplay opportunities. Maybe it was Yeatle, I don't know. And that's it right there, right? Gracie with Roadhog Hook, whether you play Roadhog or not, you have to admit, Hook is like one of the top 2 or 3 abilities in the game. It feels amazing to land a hook. It just feels so good to land a hook, right? So if we take that away,
I guess,
yeah, satisfaction-wise, it feels good to land a hook. It feels satisfying to land a JunkerQueen knife, right? And I think that's like, we need to find ways of like giving more tank players that without taking away their identity.
I mean, yeah, a main flaw is as well is his hitbox. He's just a fat penguin walking around. Like, why is he so slow? Why is he so fat? It doesn't really make sense to me, since he has no damage threat or tankiness threat. I don't know. They need to look at him very carefully. I don't know. Blizzard has this issue where they are afraid of admitting mistakes most of the time. So like, so if this rework doesn't work, if it's not good, in my head I'm thinking, are they gonna change him or are they just gonna leave him? You know, that's a very scary, thought for someone who actually genuinely used to only play the game because of Hog. You know, just like Spilo said, I used to plan the sickest hooks just for satisfaction wise. Like, oh yeah, I could hook someone in front of me, but I want to get that mercy up there. And if I land that, I'm gonna be fucking screaming my head off. But yeah, they just removed satisfaction, him as a character, and you just have to do twice as much to get value. And I think that's what a lot of us hate as Hog players. So we just resulted in flexing to other tanks, should I say.
Yeah, this is where Overwatch has like two problems that I think are relatively unique. Is like one is that changes are very slow because there's like a lot of technical demands, I think, to changing a hero. I think in a different game it would be more straightforward to like change a hero's ability because like a lot of the heroes are like the same model, just like the exterior is slightly different, and then you just change a thing and it looks different a little bit, right? Whereas in Overwatch, every character's model is unique. It's like a whole separate thing. And now if you're going to change one of his abilities, you have to like create someone has to go and animate a new thing and has to have a visual design made before you can change it. And on top of that, just we've seen reworks, all of this are just like really slow to come out, right? They take months and months and months, and by the time the rework has come out, the state of what the thing was initially solving is gone. It's like, well, we're changing Hog now, but the season 2 meta where everyone hated him is gone, like, or whatever it was, season 2 or 3, that's long in the past already. So they probably need to think about that, like, is there a way they can make that a little bit easier for themselves to actually address things more quickly? But then also the other thing is that what we've spoken about a little bit is that hero fantasy thing, and the fact that people one trick heroes a lot, right? And it's like, again, you think of a MOBA, okay, there's like 100 heroes. So like if let's say your hero's really bad or they may be reworking that hero, you're not going to lose your entire reason for playing the game because there's 50 other heroes I can pick, and for a while that hero's out the equation. But with Overwatch, your hero goes into the dumpster, goes to the farm, as Flats put it. Like, your reason to play the game goes away. And Yeatle, I want to hear your thoughts on this. If you've kind of got any thoughts on Roadhog before we talk about Ball as well.
I think it basically just stems from like Roadhog being very easy to hard counter, whether it be like Orisa or Ana. And I think you could probably go the direction of making Roadhog a little bit less vulnerable to things like Ana sleep nade or Orisa just hard countering his kit. Which hypothetically, let's say for a second, like his vape gives him fortify and makes him anti-immune. Just hypothetically, right? If you're gonna do that and you're gonna give him the one shot, then he's gonna have to lose a lot somewhere else, right? Maybe he
Yeah,
sucks
true.
at the tank interaction. Because I feel like one thing with Roadhog is that like he was really good at just putting tanks in a blender with the whole hog. So it's a lot of give or take. But I think I agree with Insulted that taking away the one shot may not have been the way to go. So that's basically
Salt, any reflection on sort of Roadhog with what everyone else has discussed?
Yeah, I agree with what Yeatle said, pretty much. That's about it, really.
Yeah. Any words on Roadhog for the devs? Because I know the devs listen to these a lot. Any word for Roadhog before we move on? Talk about your boy, what you want.
Well, whatever they add, I hope it's good. I think they just need to not be afraid of constantly tweaking, because I don't know, I think it's just very frustrating. Most of the issue comes from support. I think that's where it is mainly for tanks. We deal with a lot of issues because of support, but that's an entirely different subject. But Hog, I don't know, it's weird. It's either give him a good kill potential and allow him to be lackluster. Because I like the play that I can, one shot, but I still can get hard counted by Ana and Nade. I can play around that. That's fine. But then that's where I should be rewarded, right? I think they just, if the rework goes through and whatever it is, if it's not that great, please think about giving Hog his aggression back or his threat, like his one shot. That's what I want to say.
Okay, fair enough. All right, then from one potential problem to the other potential problem, I'm going to take it to Ball next. Because Yeatle, you've already spoken about, you've made a video on it, an excellent video. I think most people in the Norwich community have watched it. The fall of Ball, as it were. Describe the state of Wrecking Ball. If you can summarize that. I encourage anyone listening to go watch that video, but if you could summarize it and how you feel about Wrecking Ball, go right ahead.
A lot of people watch that video and they've come to the conclusion that I was saying Ball is the uber worst tank in the game. And I don't think that's entirely true. There's a lot of scenarios where when you're not getting countered, you could be the lobby admin. But I've been on both the receiving end and the giving end of I'm playing support. This ball's doing a great job of running the lobby. Somebody goes Sombra and it's over. This game's free. It's the freest game ever. That's just one example. But I think what Ball really suffered from that I personally am not enjoying him as much is with the change from 2 tanks to 1 tank, there's a lot of just focus on him, right? This whole like setup and flank play style is a lot less viable. It's his playstyle is just one dimensional, really. And so what I was saying is, I think another problem is like if you want to go and dive the back line, if you don't have somebody else that dives with you, you're basically doing nothing, right? Because they'll just heal each other and they're gonna out heal your damage, and then their tank is just gonna run on your team. Like you're doing literally nothing. So I think I guess to summarize, it just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Just basically balling as good as it used to be is what I'm trying to say.
Do you think it's like a do you think that's something that requires like a rethinking of how Wrecking Ball works? Because I don't know how in his current state they can address what you're talking about, which is like it's just not as possible to flank and set up the way you would in Overwatch 1 while your other tank is kind of occupying them.
Yeah, I think realistically, it's never going to go back to Overwatch 1 because, again, it's only one tank. He's just going to kind of be in the state of where they're probably just going to buff him and he's going to be overpowered. Everyone's going to complain. He's going to get nerfed, rinse and repeat. But I keep on coming back to this argument that I've made a couple times. It's that there's things in the game also that you legitimately can't outplay. And I think if you can outplay them better, if there's more room for outplay, um, it wouldn't be as bad or as miserable. The Sombra example, or if I'm diving a sniper, for example, and that sniper gets healed. My job is ball in Overwatch 1 at least. I dive the sniper, my team can walk, they can do stuff. But in Overwatch 2, I am the tank. I'm diving a sniper, sure, I'm getting the heal resource. But again, now they have to deal with our tank, and our tank's a lot more threatening than me. Like, I'm not gonna out damage their heals, type of thing. So yeah,
Interesting.
I'm not sure if I answered.
No, it's just yeah, it's room for thought. I'll go to Spilo first, and then I'll talk to Flats about this. But Spilo, your feelings on the Wrecking Ball conundrum?
Yeah, but ball is really unique because in a lot of circumstances, you're either catching somebody isolated and they're just automatically dead because you can go anywhere that you want, or they put even like the slightest bit of attention on you, they're going to stop you from getting the kill. Um, but I think where ball's difficulty is that I think by design, at least accidentally in Overwatch 2 with the adaptive shields and the head hitbox and the movement and the tech, your survivability is like insane. So you're not going to have like that burst of value. You're going to go and you're going to go and you're going to go. You're going to have that uptime. You're going to be able to go in and again and again until they succeed. And then all of a sudden now your uptime is like completely tanked. So I think the problem with ball is that like it's both the perfect example of like the indirect value not feeling great, where like theoretically your team should be able to kill the enemy tank because you're pulling all of the healing and the damage resources your direction and still surviving it. And that doesn't feel as fun. I think also as well though, like I was saying, is that there's the difficulty of um, how do you balance this character that can live forever unless they fill in the blank, right? Unless it's hack or Discord or sleep and then all of a sudden his and I think that's the problem is that like tank struggles. A lot of these tanks struggle the most with utility. And if the tank doesn't have a way of dealing with that utility, they die instantly or they're unkillable. I mean, how many times have we played versus an 1,000 HP ball without CC, without Discord, and the ball literally is just fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, and you just can't kill it. And I think that those extremes are where that's where you have people feeling like they need to counterpick. So finding some inherent way of having ball be able to deal with that crowd control better, mitigated crowd control better, and then compensating by removing his health pool, that allows him to actually lean into his uptime and actual consistent damage threat. I do also think, like Yeatle said, some of the things that he said in his video were really good. I think the boop on tank, the 1v1 on tank, not something that you're always doing in Overwatch 1, but it was a very important side play that's almost completely irrelevant in Overwatch 2. You don't boop harass tanks anymore. It just doesn't work, right? Whether it's the CC reduction or the HP pool increase. AoE slams. Overwatch 2 is too spread out for AoE slam to have much value anymore. So that's another aspect of his kit that hasn't aged as well. So it's like I think it could be a systemic problem, but again, if you like look at it under the microscope, the answer is usually, unfortunately, I think a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, and a little bit of column C. And that's where I'm going to share a little bit of flat skepticism and cynicism to where I just don't know if they're going to be able to do, even though it might be minor tweaks, I just don't know if we're going to see the tweaks that we need quickly enough to like keep people playing that enjoy those more niche characters.
Yeah, Flats.
I mean, kind of just cooked there a little bit. I remember back in what was it? Was it season 2 or 3? Like ball was really, really bad before he got like his little buff with the shields and stuff like that. And I remember making a tier list in like season 2, and I was like, guys, Ball isn't bad. He's just bad because he's gatekept by all these other things. And if you buff Ball, he's gonna break. And then, well, we had that really strong Ball meta for like 2 weeks or something like that, right? And then after that, he got it like a little nerf, plus like Sombra came back, and then he just, like Hog, pretty much went out to the farm. And you know what? There's nothing you can do, because if you buff him again, you break him. And that's not even like a problem for us, I don't think. I think it's more of a problem in like your diamond and belows, because those guys don't know how to CC the Ball, chain CC, discord him. Like, you see a Ball and you're playing Zen, you're like, oh, I gotta swap, I'm gonna die. But like, Zen also is kind of good against Ball with the discord, you know, like your supports need to help each other. And I was just reading from one of my editors in chat, who he's a really good Ball player. He's like 4,400 and like in Overwatch 1 playing Ball. And he was like, saw a Ball killing their Ana and didn't think the Ball was good. It was like, wow, their supports are terrible. You know, and it's like, in those ranks especially, they hate Ball because he never dies, right? And it's like this really big disconnect, because he can't be good at high rank because like he doesn't have the tools he needs. And if you buff the tools he needs, you're gonna break him, and then you'll double break him on the lower end. So it's like you're just kind of screwed, you know? And man, like I feel for you. I haven't actually watched your video. Would you be cool with me watching that and reacting to it? Just
Yeah, go for
just
it.
curious. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no problem.
Because I'm sure you have some really good points in there. Because I'm not a great Ball player. I never have been. I played a bunch of it at the end of Overwatch 1. We all had to, but I just don't have an answer. Like, I wish I had an answer for you too on like what to do. But like, I think you're also in the same situation as like Hog players, of you're either gonna get giga buffed and it's gonna break, or it's not going to get buffed at all, and you literally can't play the hero. And it's like, how many characters are going to have that happen to them? And you know, not to go back to the Hog thing, but really, really fast, I do want to say, I mean, it's very publicly known, I still disagree on the one-shot thing, but it should not have taken 7 seasons to get the Hog rework. We identified that like the beginning of the game, right? Like, you shouldn't have been out on the farm for 7 months, you know? Like we're at the anniversary of Overwatch 2 at this point. Like, come on now, we gotta get it moving. And I know a lot of stuff happens, but yeah, I feel for you, and I don't really have an answer, but good luck.
Yeah, it goes back to that one-dimensionality thing that we were talking about. Like, I think the way Spilo summarized it is like, how I would describe tanking in Overwatch 2 is like you can pop off until you're no longer allowed to, right? And that's kind of like the problem, is that like you're like doing. Okay, they now pick these things, and now I can't at all do the thing, and it's too boom or bust, right? It's like everything is really one-dimensional in that system, right? That's why I've never been a fan of the rock paper scissors, and I've railed against it from the start. But it's like, if you take Sombra, for example, which we've mentioned a few times, and I'm sure Yeatle has nightmares about it, right? It's like the Sombra feels miserable for the Ball, but then on the other side, I know Fitzy is like in the same boat, where he talks to me a lot about like, well, yeah, but Sombra's really one-dimensional too, and like I feel really frustrated. Like, they've also been waiting really long for a rework. And your character's also like, well, if I'm not doing this, I'm useless, right? It's like, if I'm not picking Sombra to counterpick a Doomfist or a Ball, I'm also not, like, my character doesn't have a reason to exist. So it's like that one-dimensionality of, like, it's so easy to stop the thing. It's like the answers are very rarely adapt your playstyle or make this subtle adjustment to this thing that's happening. The answer so often, so easily, is just pick X hero now, and this button will counter that guy. Like, this button right here, that's it. That's all you need to do, and it's over. And it's frustrating, because that's also like the TikTokian approach to Overwatch, right? It's like here's 2 simple tips for how to win an Overwatch game. When they have Ball, pick Sombra. Thank you, subscribe and follow, right? It's like,
you see the guy at the stream deck where he has like a character, and then you press the button, and then it shows all the characters that counter it. And it was wrong half the time, but it was funny because it kind of works.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the sad thing, is that it's a dumbing down of the game. I know I can already hear Samito's voice in the back of my head being like, it's a 6v6 problem, SAB, it's a 6v6 problem, like, this wouldn't be a problem in 5v5. I think it can be solved. Again, I agree with Flats, is that I don't really have a dog in the race. I just want Overwatch to be good, and I think there's so much 5v5 can offer. We've just really barely explored it, because we keep going back to this, and I really don't want the game to turn into this. I really don't want the game to turn into this very one-dimensional, basic, like, we're just playing rock paper scissors with extra steps and better graphics, right? It's like that's what it's become, and it shouldn't have to be that way. So I'm gonna take it back to Yeatle. Actually, Salt, do you have anything to say on Ball as the fellow I get countered very easily hero?
Yeah, as for ball mains, I do feel for them, but I don't even mean this in a bad way. Like, let me just start off like this. I think being good at ball is probably one of the highest mechanical things you can do as a tank. Like, if you're good at ball mechanically, you're fucking insane. Like, not everyone can do it, right? So you guys get my respect there. But it's just another tank that kind of defeats the purpose of how the game works, essentially. Kind of like Widow, right? You know how Widow is pretty much the only hero that can consistently one shot and take out a team. You know, I think that's quite out of the ordinary compared to the rest of the roster. Same as his survivability is fucking insane compared to other tanks. But it's just his playstyle has changed a lot. Like Yeatle said, you can't kill anything. You can't do anything. The only thing you can do is, hey, look at me. You know, but he does it very well. Now, you can talk about low ranks. Does it work? Yeah, I guess. High ranks is a lot harder. But if you're talking about pro play as well, I think the reason why ball isn't played that much in general is because Doomfist is just a better ball. You know, Doomfist does what Winston can do, but, you know, twice as better as well. So, yeah, I'm on the fence about ball being buffed as well, because if he is, he's very I wouldn't say scary to deal with. It's just a hero you just know you're not going to kill. Because I remember when I went against Beaver, oh my god, that was hell on earth. During those 2 weeks, I was like, I cannot kill this guy. I cannot kill him no matter what I do. So, yeah, it's just... They just have to be very careful how they go about certain hero buffs, essentially on tank. And going towards DPS as well, why the fuck do we still have tank busters on DPS roster? Like, numerous tank busters. Like, why can Echo do what she does with her Ray, you know, Reaper, the list goes on, whatnot. But yeah, that's just my take.
I'm gonna go to Spilo actually, and then final thoughts from Yeatle. But Spilo, any response on what Salt has said or anything in general about Wrecking Ball?
I mean, no, nothing that I haven't already said. I think it's just situational survivability can be really tough. You know, it's tough to balance. So I think just like again, it's like the Roadhog conversation. Is too much of one extreme, too much of the other extreme. I think there has to be something in between that allows ball to be more consistently not countered and yet feel like not an unlivable, you know, unkillable. Excuse me, God. Nothing really has been said though.
Yeatle.
Yeah, I think the rock paper scissors aspect brings me back to it again. Outplayability. It shouldn't just be simple rock beat scissors. Like it should kind of soft counter, but you should be able to do something about it. I think something that you guys brought up a lot is that ball has a lot of survivability. So here's another hypothetical, just like the Roadhog one. So imagine ball goes in, and instead of adaptive shields working to give him like all this extra health, the range is reduced and he gets CC immunity. Okay. What that changes is he can only get the CC immunity from really close range. So he can still get slept, he can still get hacked and all this from far away, but like he then has to get really close to like get value out of the shields, get the overhealth, for example. So I think that creates some outplayability because one, now the ball can outplay the sleep, the hack, or whatever, right? He's about to get hacked, adaptive shields really quick. Okay. He's about to get slept, adaptive shields real quick. But they can still stop him from a further range. Or they can wait for the shields to happen or etc. That's just my take. I think outplayability is the important thing here, and obviously you'll have to change the dials on thing, maybe less health, etc.
Bring back experimental patch. Like, I would love to see that tried out.
No,
I mean, yeah, I think that's the issue with a lot of tanks is that we are easily punished, but we can't do anything about it. We can't punish back. I think essentially that's the biggest problem, especially with Doomfist and Ball. You lock in Sombra, you're pretty much fucked unless you're a one trick where you know how to actually deal with it.
We learned this lesson already. I feel like we already learned this lesson years ago. It was called Brig. And it was like Tracer was really good, so they introduced a character to hard counter the Tracer, and it broke the whole game. And now we have like 8 of them or more.
Yeah, I share
Oh,
this frustration
man.
with you, Flats, because it feels like that's one of my frustrations with Overwatch's balance. That it feels like it's a lot of questions we've already answered. So like today we had the dev blog about like many things. We talked about the Hog thing, but also the May thing, and they said, "Oh, okay, we're actually toning back the CC that we gave May because that wasn't fun." And I was kind of like, we knew that. Like we knew that for years. For years we said this. And then we tried it anyways, and now we're like, oh, sorry guys, we learned. Like, are we gonna do another life cycle of Overwatch 1 to learn this, like, to the same things that we learned before? Like, ask anybody who played, and they would have told you this is bad, right? And even the philosophy of it was something I disagree with, because I remember when they buffed May, they were like, oh yeah, she's not performing as well as we'd like, and it's like, yeah, if May
She was fine.
if May performs as well as Tracer, right, in every situation, if you're looking at the win rate across every map, literally, right, if you're looking at the pick rate, win rate across every map, across every comp, against every scenario, and May is even remotely comparable to Tracer, your game is fucked. Your game is like, there's no one's going to play that game because what you need to do on May versus what you're doing on Tracer is like worlds apart. So like, they just need to let this go. Like, we just need to learn faster or lean on the people who know that they've already been here. They've already done this. We don't need to experiment again with the same thing we did before. Like, let's just skip ahead.
Ironically, it wasn't even a buff. It was a buff in certain niche situations. Like, you shouldn't be freezing a tank anyway if you're a high level May, right? And
Right.
it was a significant nerf of being able to deal with duels at close range. And yet, every May, I remember the Korean top 500 May player, I read some big posts about how it was an overall net nerf and this was stupid. And yet, nobody's happy. Nobody's happy with this change. Nobody wants this.
It's true. It's the same with Sombra as well. Like, again, I know the Sombra players are not happy with how they changed Sombra, but then everyone's frustrated against what they're going up. So it's like nobody's happy. Neither the players who played the hero. Salt's going to be frustrated with the Hog change. He's going to be like, I'm not happy. I preferred the one shot. And then everyone else is going to be like, we're not happy either because now... Anyways, I'm not going to try and turn into a rant. Speaking of potential rants, let's go over next to the boy Reinhardt, the stalwart of Overwatch. So we have Ryan God himself, Flats. You gonna? I know Salt has a hot take coming later, but first your thoughts on Reinhardt at the moment.
Well, I was going to make a point earlier. We were talking about one-shotting on tank. There was a very, very mysteriously no talk of why Ryan can't one-shot anymore. Most characters, and I understand why they did it because they were trying to get rid of one-shots across the board. But I will say this, okay? Ryan, I don't even know if it's like that bad of like what he is now. It's just there's so much other stuff that breaks him or literally just turns off your ability to play the game that there's very little reason to pick the character, because you're going to get bullied by Orisas, you're going to get poked out by Sigs depending on maps, you're going to get bullied by Sombras. If they have a May, right, are they going to win every game on May? Maybe not. But you know what the May is going to do every fight? It's going to wall you off from your team. And then you have to do the dance where you just jump there and hold your shield and wait until somebody breaks the wall. And if they don't break the wall, well, you ain't having a good time. And even if you survive, you got to go around the corner and wait because you're 100 HP with no shield. And so it's like, you did your job perfectly and you survived, but it was, oh my God, was it ass. And the fun part of Ryan used to be he was pinning people and getting the kill and shattering people. Well, Shatter got nerfed, which was like the one cool thing it had with like the one shot. But like back in the day, Shatter used to be 3 seconds. I don't know if people remember that, but like I was actually, before I was a streamer, I actually was rolling people on ladder during double shield meta because all the double shield players were dumb and like they put down the Orisa shield and the Sigma put his shield like 2 feet behind, just walk through and shatter him and just get a 6-man. It was like win every fight. It was great. But then they put it down to 2.5 and then you weren't able to really kill anything. But then you also have AoE heals, and you also have these longer lasting heals, and you got like an Alari turret that's up somewhere on the map because ML7 made a video on like where there's like some spot that you can't see it, and it's like way off in the side. And so you shatter someone, and you like swing, fire strike, and the support, like the other support had an AoE heal as they were on the ground, and it actually healed the other guy. So he's just stand up, and then they CC you back and then kill you. So it's like the fun part of the game isn't really even that impactful anymore because, talking about ball earlier is how often do you get a massive shatter anymore? You don't. Like you get like 1, maybe 2 people. Like if they're all standing in a line, and don't have any cooldowns, you're probably playing in like the metal ranks. Like I can't even tell you the last time I got a 5-man shatter. I literally couldn't tell you. It's been months, if that. So what else do you have? You have your hammer, which they buffed in Overwatch 1 from 75 damage to 85 damage. And I don't even know if he ever even needed that buff at the time. What he needed was better survivability. And now you got a little bit of extra shield. Although he lost a bunch of armor earlier, like season 2 or 1, like, you know, like way back towards the beginning. So I don't know if you guys saw, like, Cloudy made a tweet, and he was like, he has like his hero mastery stats, and he's like level 200 in wins, like level 190 in kills, and his shield is 700, almost close to 700, like level 700, because all he does is sit there and shield 90% of the time. And that's so boring. Like, you literally don't play the game half the time, because if you try to make a play, you're going to get CC'd, you're going to get bullied, and you're going to die. So, like, you got to go through the checklist. Okay, do they have all these cooldowns? Okay, they used all the cooldowns. Okay, let me walk 2 steps forward. Oh, they have the cooldowns back. So it's like, okay, there's that. Then you actually can't even play the character a lot of time unless you have a Lucio. But Lucio isn't as good right now in, like, ladder, because you can just pick, like, Bap, Ana, or Ilari or whatever, and they just do so much damage and so much poke. You're never going to get there anyways, and you're going to lose the poke battle. There's just, like, so many things that are, like, played against you that why play the character? Because let's say you go to Shatter him, the Orisa spears you out, or you go to Shatter him, they pop Fortify, or you go to Shatter him and they carry time Suzu, so even if you hit them, they all instantly stand up, or they hit it on the way down and the Shatter just gets negated. Oh, they slept you. Oh, you're slept for your whole Shatter duration. Oh, they popped an Anonade as they went down, but they also have like an Ilari turret. Well, guess what? Now they're getting extra healing from the Anonade plus the Ilari turret. You ain't killing them. So everything that you have is now basically revolves around getting a lucky fire strike kill and basically being a shittier Orisa, where you just stand there and you wait and hope to not die. Because, like, the days of aggression and the days of going forward and trying to make plays are gone. So why play the shittier Orisa when you can just play the better Orisa? You know? So
Yeah,
it's tough. Not saying he's like the worst tank right now, but like, it ain't fun.
that is a damning indictment. I mean, I'm actually surprised because in response to the tweet for this podcast, Cloudy actually replied and said, "Tank feels very good right now, especially Reinhardt. Only issue is Orisa and Bastion. Nerf them, and then tank perfect." Which I was very surprised. I was shocked, especially considering, you know, Cloudy seems to be doing all kinds of wacky shit on Reinhardt, no shield challenges and whatnot. So maybe he's making his own fun. But yeah, I was surprised to see here he was kind of still having fun. I want to let Yeatle have a go and Spilo, and then I want to let Salt, you know, unhinge to the maximum. But yeah, Yeatle, do you feel like more on the flat spectrum or the cloudy spectrum where he's like, yeah, I'm fine with it?
I think Reinhardt is probably like one of the middle of the pack / better tanks for outplaying stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be like way more fun. I think there's a good point to be made that Pin, there's just so much stuff that you have to account for. I feel like the outplay window was not getting pinned. Like, he has to charge up, he makes a loud noise, you know he has this ability. You had time to outplay it. So if you get hit by that pin, just for it to get negated by a cleanse and then the Reinhardt gets punished is a bit silly with like how easy it is to just cleanse, you know? Another example would be like Immortality Field. Hypothetically, if it had a slightly longer windup time, then it's like, okay, the Ryan probably went too far with that pin. Fair enough. But I think with Reinhardt specifically, my take is that I think he's pretty good. Like, he can shield hack, he can shield sleep and nade. But I do agree that the pin, like, once you get it, you should have it like 90% of the time. So I think that's my take on Reinhardt.
Maybe some sort of like, yeah, when someone is pinned, they can't be, I don't know, fortified during
cleansed,
pin.
they can't be
Yeah,
immortal.
fortified during pin might be a bit much, but something like where
Yeah.
once you grab a guy, they're like, maybe once they grab, they're intangible, so they can't be helped, or so, I don't know, spitballing.
Yeah.
But Spilo, you go, and then again, I'll let Salt kind of just go wild.
I don't think much. You know, I think he's fine. I think he's mostly fine as a design. I think like the tweak they gave to his pin, like I was saying earlier, is just awesome. I just think that if we could just have less, he still has to deal with some stuff that he shouldn't have to deal with. Like, really, a lot of the tank roster, maybe not as much as a Winston or as a Wrecking Ball, but He does have ways of outplaying it, but Orisa Javelin, it's just fortify. It just feels annoying to play into. Bastion still feels annoying to play into. Um, I think just changing. I think leave Reinhardt as is. Maybe some tweaks to, like you were saying, Shatter. Maybe some tweaks to Pen, but don't touch Ryan. I think Ryan is great, but change his environment does need to be improved.
Interesting. All right, Salt, you've been stewing. Go ahead, make people mad.
My whole take about Ryan is that he's one of the dumbest heroes and should never exist in the whole game of Overwatch. And there's a reason why he's very popular. Low skill, not very mechanical. Now, listen, I'm not an idiot. Like, I'm very logical. High tier gameplay, high GM, whatever. It's mind games, right? And when you win those mind games, you land the shatter. It's an amazing feeling. Like, I get that. I used to play a lot of Ryan back in Overwatch 1 too, before I was a streamer and everything, but it just doesn't make sense because I forgot what season it was, but he was buffed for like a month maybe, or like 2 months. I forgot when. But it just doesn't make sense. Something that is 600 plus health, half of it armor, charges in, makes a mistake, cancels. And then he has 2 fire strikes, 100 damage that could, pretty much delete people. And then he has a shatter and a shield to like negate everything.
You just described the character, Salt. What are you
No,
talking
but
about?
but that's the thing. He has everything. He has everything. Why can he shoot across the map? Why can he cancel a mistake? Why can he get out of everything when he wants? Oh, I made a mistake. Oh, I'm just backing up now. Bye, guys. Oh, I go in again. Bye, guys. It just doesn't make sense. Where is the chink in his armor? Where is his weakness? And that goes to
You just described it.
I'm going to be honest. I think him as a hero, he's not as weak as you say, because he works insanely well with certain heroes like Bastion, Sim. Right now, this is like exposing what he's really good with right now. Sim and Bastion and Bap, he's fucking insane right now. He can literally
played Ryan without the Sim.
No, but that's the thing. Like,
you played him without Lucio.
The thing with Ryan is like he is bad, right, without those people. But in order to be insanely insane and good, he needs those people, and that's why I think it's a flaw. Why should you, as a tank, have to depend on that? And then why should I, as a support or a DPS, have to fill around you? And then in the end, if you get tank diff by the other guy, right? Like, so let's say another Ryan lands a whole shatter, and we lose. Oh, so I just filled for some tank who dictates the whole game. It makes no sense.
You just disproved your own point in like 2 seconds. And most people aren't going to do that. So you can't play the character because most players aren't going to do that. Wait, what?
Yeah, so just remove him from the game.
So, hang on. Let me ask you a question. What do you think is the impactful part of Ryan?
I think the most impactful part of him, the fact that he can just go in, revert his mistake, and just walk out.
What do you mean go in, revert his mistake?
Like, okay, so you said, right, charge should have like this tangible thing where if he charges someone, they're dead, right? Okay, so if he has that, why is he able to cancel his charge? That makes no sense. Like, why can't he commit like Overwatch 1 Ryan? Like, he just doesn't.
Because you don't have a second tank, you can't get backed up. You're going all in play.
But like,
that
that's
introduced
the thing.
counterplay because otherwise his charge was too easy to counterplay. You had every hack, any sort of CC.
But that's what. No. I'm saying the fact that he has a cancel, he shouldn't have something tangible. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think it's okay, but I also think charge is on such a low cooldown. It's like pretty much the same cooldown as Hog Hook.
I don't think I've ever met a tank player that thinks the strongest part of Ryan is his pin.
No, I'm not saying it's his pin. It's the fact that he's allowed to go in and revert his mistake, just like that.
But how else do you get there? Like, you just you talk about like with walking up, and then you burn your whole shield. Like you lose all of those resources. Which, by the way, I just want to point out, like earlier we talked about like Hog, and we talked about all these tanks making plays and like wanting to do something. But like everyone's point about Ryan has been his shield, and that's like the most boring part. That's the part you just stand there and like try not to die. Like that's you guys tell me like oh he should have one shot on Hog, but then also say like but Ryan can sit there and shield. but you don't do anything. You sit there and you shield. The fun part of Rein is fire strikes. The fun part of Rein is going all the way in, hitting that pin or hitting that shatter, right? So it's like I don't know how we sit there and we look at like the shield botting style of Rein is that supposed to be peak Rein? Because like I think we're very disconnected on what people actually think or what like why people play it versus like what you're saying is why people play it.
I mean, yeah, you can find a different aspect of him which is fun. Doesn't mean that's necessarily the best way to play him. You know, I think he just doesn't fit. A tank shouldn't be completely.
You don't mind. Let me try and help Salt here because I feel like your own thoughts are getting a little bit clouded. What can you describe? What is like a frustrating situation that you find when you encounter Reinhardt? Like, can you describe the situation where you're like, this feels unfun to me?
I think it's very unfun. I know a lot of people disagree, but they hardcore want Rhine meta. But in my opinion, Rhine meta is not fun. It's just it never is. You hard force an entire team to fit into your around you and play around you, and then it hopes you pop off. Right? I just don't like the fact that it's rushing like brain dead rats and attack like piranhas. I think that's so boring. And then if I play Rhine, I have to hope I have someone who's actually playing the correct character, or I have to hope I play better, or I win the mind games. No, I get it. Like it's kind of like goats, I guess, where it's fun for a while, a little bit, but after a month or two, it's like, nah, this is fucking boring. And he doesn't. So I was just gonna say, he's just. Oh no, I'll let you talk.
I just want to say the unfun part of, or sorry, the unfun part of Rhine is players picking characters to play with him, and that's
no.
fault.
But the whole boring part is Ryan's gameplay. I just think Rush is such a brain dead fucking thing. It's right next to Double Shield. But I'm gonna be honest, it's right next to Double Shield. And if you can disagree, but you're just bad at the game. Well, not you, Fat, sorry, but like in general, like people are just terrible at the game because it's very easy just to run in, bang, kill.
It's like the overly synergistic parts that you dislike. That like the what Ryan when there's like 4 things put on top of him, like that overly synergistic thing is like unfun. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, like I think the synergy with Ryan and all the heroes together is just like it just leads to a bad gameplay, and it goes straight from not FPS anymore, just a straight fucking zerging StarCraft 2. Like I think it's just crazy that people find it fun. And for example, you can look at the World Cup recently. Sure, Farah Meta, I don't know how to say his name, but that Arabic streamer, whatever, popped off. Yes, that's the one. He almost lost to like Rush, I guess. I forgot what team, but it's very strong and it's very brain dead for the value it gets, and it's not fun to play against.
Okay.
So we still haven't answered the question though of like what is the problem or what makes Ryan so bad. But like the answer is like you don't like Rush, but like you replace Ryan with Ramattra, what happens?
I think it actually leads to a better gameplay. Like I'm gonna be real, because
why though?
Ramattra doesn't have a pin that instantly kills. He doesn't have a fat ass shield that he can, stop every single damage without, having a weakness where Ramattra has 400 health.
Okay.
I mean, no, but if you have shield and you use block, let's say you're a mech form, as soon as those run out, you're weak, right?
Yeah,
Ryan doesn't have that.
But when you cycle through cooldowns on Ramattra, you almost never don't have something. You have your shield, and then when your shield's done, you have your Nemesis form.
All right.
And then you have your.
I'm stepping in here. I'm stepping in here now because we're kind of straying far from the Word of God, and we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty of just like this subjective preferences of what kind of comp we like and don't like. So I'm gonna move away from that. I'm gonna ask Yeatle and Spilo if they have any more thoughts on Reinhardt before we move on to another hero. Either you?
I think one of the little details is I think that the charge change is why we can actually see Ryan outside of Rush. I think without the charge change, you don't see Ryan outside of Rush. The charge change is what gave him that autonomy that allows him to actually move around the map in more circumstances. So to Salt's point, I think I agree that some of the times when we see rush, I'm a rush hater, right? I'm a Western coach that hates rush. It's like it's not supposed to be that way. But I think it's because I don't like Bastion. I don't like Sim trading on the front line. So when I talk about things aspects of Ryan that I don't like, it's some of the rush DPS characters that he enables through shield, not the pen. It's the shield. I don't think the shield is necessarily wildly OP necessarily. Don't quote me on that. I think it's probably mostly fine. Although they did buff it recently. They buffed it 200 HP. I don't know why. Nobody knows why that was the thing they decided to buff. But anyway, but yeah, I think it's mostly the shield, if anything. But I think the charge is the best part about his kit. I think without charge, I don't think the character's playable. I think the character's only playable in Rush without the charge change. So I don't know. I can see aspects that are annoying, comps that he can enable that are kind of annoying, but I think the character itself is good. And I think if anything, the shield is something that could be looked at. But even then, I don't think it's a big deal personally.
Okay.
If it was another hero, I'd say that maybe they need to like change him in a way so that I think the main thing is like pins so that he can more consistently get more pins. But I think really it's my beef is more with immortality. I think the problem is like you can outplay a sleep dart, but then you throw in the mix the cleanse as well. Like there's starting to become too many things that you need to calculate when you go in for a pin. And I think again, my beef is with immortality. I think both cleanse and lamp are just too quick to just counter pin. I think it needs to be like you get the pin, you get the pin. Unless you go across the map with it, then it's like, okay, they had like 3 seconds to throw the lamp and have it build up. So I think, yeah, immortality is more of a problem. And Ryan's kind of fine.
Okay, fair. All right, that's a good range of opinions on the character Reinhardt. A healthy discussion there. Let's move on then. I'm going to start going alphabetical now. So we've kind of discussed some of the more standout tanks. Let's go back to D.Va. So D.Va, I don't think has received too much discussion, but I'm going to go to Yeatle first again. Yeatle, you've played a lot of D.Va. Your feelings on her right now? Because I feel like some people, I've heard this take where a lot of people feel like she's actually kind of outdated as well in Overwatch 2. Like she doesn't really do anything that's better than what another tank could already do.
Yeah, I'll say in Overwatch 1, I used to be a D.Va main before I was a ball main. I was a really good D.Va main. I was 4,500. It was the first tank I ever got top 500 with it, and I flew to 4,500 with it, which is crazy. I did it out of voice chat too. But
Dope.
I think D.Va is like, I don't like the direction they've gone with D.Va. I haven't played her much in Overwatch 2, to be fair, but it's mostly because I don't like the direction they've gone. I think they should have made her a super mobile peel tank and not so much emphasis on her ability to just like put in the work, put in the damage. Um, but besides that, I mean, I think D.Va, like the only interaction I'd complain about is like D.Va versus Zarya. I think Zarya is the one tank that I'd say that there's something like actually really broken with, and it's the fact that she can just double bubble herself. I think that there should be a window in between one bubble and another bubble. I know I'm kind of strained, but the reason I'm saying this is because in Overwatch 1, if the Zarya used a bubble, Zarya's the counter to D.Va, then you could punish the Zarya and push her. But in Overwatch 2, it's like you're just hard countered. She has 2 bubbles, and you might not know if she has the extra bubble or not. So I think my well, one, I think she should be the mobile peel tank, and two, I think her versus Zarya is kind of like a dumb matchup with how it's working. There's like it's so one sided. That's it.
Okay, so it's a bit too one-dimensional. Spilo, do you have any thoughts on what Yeatle said? Or D.Va?
Disagree with both takes actually. Just to introduce some spice. I think the first thing is that like I think the mobile peel is like what initially got people into D.Va, and that was unquestionably her playstyle. But the problem with that is that was when we had a guarantee that somebody on the battlefield is on the front line and needing that peel, needing that. And even then you still had to make proactive plays. The problem with like leaning too far into the peel and only the peel playstyle is that, well, what if they're not running dive? What if there isn't anything that's actually rushing? What if you actually have to go and make plays yourself? And if you lean too heavily into the playstyle, for example, imagine if Zarya could only bubble her teammates, right? I think that's kind of like I'm kind of speaking in caricature here, but I don't think that playstyle works as well. It's still an option. It's still very important, and which is why this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think D.Va is one of the hardest heroes in the game to play at the highest level. I think she's unbelievably hard. But you do need to be able to make some sort of play yourself offensively. And I actually think they might have leaned a little too far into some of her Overwatch 1 aspects. For example, I don't think 3-second Matrix is good for the game. I don't think that she should be quite as tanky as she is right now in terms of armor. Little tweaks like that. I think I don't know exactly what I would look for. It's not something I put a lot of thought into, so I'm not going to defend myself too much if somebody wants to shred me. But I just feel like she needs a little bit more personal autonomy, just a little bit more. And then I don't think leaning more into peel. I think that would be really, really good in some circumstances that would feel terrible. And I think that would feel really bad. And a lot of it, like there would be comps where it's a poke comp. What do you do? Like what kind of play can you enable? On the Zarya example, obviously Zarya versus D.Va, it's a lot easier for the Zarya. But I do feel that D.Va on most maps in most situations, especially if she can keep that sort of offensive option, does have the capability to play around the Zarya. If you can move around the Zarya, if you force bubbles elsewhere, Zarya is even a killable target without bubbles. So I think that like there's still playstyle there. Again, it's always the question about like how much easier is it for the Zarya versus the D.Va, but it's not like I wouldn't say it's at the top of my list of like priorities, like hard counters. I would say Orisa versus Zarya is actually like, which is ironically, I think Zarya versus Orisa, it's a lot harder for the Orisa than I think it is for the D.Va.
Okay, I'm gonna
Not
give
that I care because
Yeatle.
screw Orisa, but you know.
Yeah, fuck Orisa, but like I'm gonna give Yeatle the chance to rebut because we had a lengthy Salt v Flats. Now this side of the podcast can have a little tete-a-tete. So Yeatle, any rebuttals?
I won't stand too hard on the D.Va because, like I said, I haven't really been playing her this season, and much like Spilo, I haven't given it too much thought about D.Va. I did play a lot of Zarya last season, and I'll tell you, the times I've lost to a D.Va is only a handful of times. Like, it's really easy to just tear up a Zarya
Skill
as a D.Va
issue.
if you know what you're doing.
Which is too good.
Maybe. But personally, I've had more trouble with Orisas than D.Vas as well. It is also map dependent. Like, if they can use high ground a lot better, like Nimbani, like, come on, what am I going to do? But yeah, I don't have too strong of a stance on like the direction the D.Va can go. I just think that we have a lot of dive heroes already. Like we have Winston that goes in, we have Doomfist that goes in, we have Ball that goes in. It would be cool if D.Va had a more unique play style of not being another tank that just goes in. So that's why
I agree
I'm
with that.
saying
Yeah.
aim towards the peel.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's tough. I mean, maybe there's a way that we could like rethink our way of peeling. Like, I mean, obviously we don't want to completely rework the character, but maybe there's something besides Matrix backline better. There's something that we're not thinking of. Because Zarya has that, right? Like the enabling somebody to actually go aggressive. Matrix is good for that too, but it's a little bit harder. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a fair summary of D.Va in a sense is that like nobody really has any strong feelings on her. Nobody really has any. She's almost a little bit the forgotten tank Overwatch 2. Flats, I mean, your homie Emong obviously was a famous D.Va enjoyer, and maybe you have any thoughts, or maybe you've spoken to him about how he feels about D.Va in Overwatch 2.
Well, actually, before Overwatch 2 even launched, I kind of was making predictions, and D.Va and Zarya were the two characters I thought were going to be the hardest to make work in 5v5 without just like giga buffing them at some point. And I think that's why we quote forget about D.Va, is because she's not dominating right now. And if D.Va got buffed or Orisa got nerfed and fell out of meta, and all of a sudden D.Va's meta, I sure as shit people are going to start complaining and talking about how broken D.Va is. It's just people's attention changes, and unfortunately, there's not really been a D.Va meta for a bit, so there's not really a reason why for people to get mad. And I remember when the small like booster buff happened, like it went for like to like what 3.5 or 3 seconds or something like that. I remember I was actually talking to Emong about it, and he goes, "Why the fuck did they why did they buff D.Va? Like she's fine." And it's like, oh well, we're probably getting Orisa syndrome where it's like, getting little small micro buffs over time, and then something else changes in the meta, then boom, you get like this new giga tank, kind of like old Orisa in Goats, or after Goats, because Orisa was supposed to be the tank to beat Goats for a while. Do you guys remember that when like Orisa got like 15 buffs, and then like they killed
Old
off Goats, and it was
Halt.
it was just, oh my god, it was just Orisa like dominating. And that was even before Double Shield even came out. With Sigma, like Orisa was just the tank. So I kind of like agree and disagree. I know Emong likes the peel play style more. I'm more of an aggressive player, so I want to go in. But I always get like really kind of annoyed with players because like I feel like that nobody knows how to play with new D.Va. You'll have those some players, and they're typically hit scan players, who are like, D.Va, why aren't you just running at their team? That's what you're supposed to do on D.Va. And it's like, well, hang on, wait a minute. Why do you think that? Oh, because like their experience with D.Va is they take the 1v1 on high ground or something with a D.Va, and the D.Va just smokes them. And it's like, well, that's what they're supposed to do. But like, I get so much more value actually peeling from my teammates half the time. So like, yeah, what they see is what they're frustrated with, and they believe, oh, that's how you're supposed to play the character. But in reality, I get more value doing something else. But like those small instances where, you know, they have an Ashe that goes high ground by herself, yeah, you can go interface and just blow her up. And she's really good at that. But that doesn't always happen. So I feel personally when I play D.Va kind of bored, where I just kind of sit there and wait for something to happen. Very, very few times are you going in, at least in my experience. If I'm going in, I'm picking Winston because I'm assuming we have an all-in comp, like a dive comp. And yeah, D.Va kind of like blows up Winston in like ranked solo queue, and that can definitely like be a factor. But at least in my personal experience, it's realistically just leftover players from Overwatch 1. Were they an off-tank player or are they a main tank player? And the main tank players will pick Winston and the off-tank players will play D.Va. And they'll kind of go to war until somebody gets annoyed, whether it's the Winston player feels like they're getting hard countered by D.Va, so then they go D.Va, or the D.Va player's team is still dying even if they peel for them, so then they go Winston as well. And I've seen it happen both ways many, many times. And I think D.Va's good. I think her playstyle is okay. I don't think she really needs to be touched. But I could totally see a meta where, let's say, like, you know, Bastion gets nerfed, so like Winston becomes better again, so which then makes D.Va better again because a lot of people are gonna pick D.Va versus Winston, whether they're a D.Va player or a Winston player, and then all of a sudden that conversation pops back up. It's like D.Va's OP, and it's like we didn't even change anything with D.Va. Like the only difference is other things changed because this game is so dictated by other things that happen. But unfortunately, we get these patches that balance based on pick rates or stuff like that, and like something else got secretly gigabuffed in the meantime, and nobody sees it coming. So
I
I
can
don't
interject
think.
two things.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Flats.
I was just saying I think D.Va's fine, but balance patches can kind of make things a lot worse than they seem, in my opinion.
One I think is D.Va's like really freaking hard, which is like she can go in either direction, like the peel or the aggression, and being able to know like which one is like diving the Ashe and high ground is technically peeling, because if you don't pressure her, she's going to kill your team, and she like being able to make that. I think it's like she's hard to balance because she is really, really, really hard, like making those micro decisions. And the other thing I will say, if we're going to talk about like what D.Va needs change more than anything else, she needs to be able to remech during her ultimate. It's maybe a bit of a hot take. Or at least shorten that animation down, because one of the reasons why she falls off so hard is because like she has one of the most inconsistent, I don't want to say worst, because it's definitely your mileage may vary, but it is really bad in a lot of circumstances. I know I got a little bit of Overwatch League glasses on right now, but that her ult is literally why wasn't playing Overwatch League. She was great versus Sombra and Tracer. She had that peel dive dynamic. There were a lot of great D.Va players in Overwatch League, but Primal Rage versus D.Va Bomb, I wonder which one I'm going to take. And I think that would just be such a small thing, because like, oh, it's an extra life. Sometimes it's an extra life. Sometimes it's not. And I think that's just a small thing. If anything, I would change with her.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting.
Overwatch in shambles.
Yeah, I mean the bomb's fine, I guess. You know, it's classic Overwatch, but I do think that like you need to be able to get sooner.
This is definitely an area where like the rank will show, because obviously I think anyone who's ever seen a metal rank game or played in the metal ranks was like, yeah, D.Va bomb is like there's a pact. Two people gotta die to it. Like it's not a D.Va bomb if two people don't just walk into it. But we had Hawk on the podcast last week, and he was like, yeah, she doesn't have an ult. Like D.Va, she doesn't have an ult. Like my ult is how I die. Like the minute I ult, everybody all ins on me, I die, and then that's it. Like, you know, so it's like I like that change. I think it's a sophisticated way of addressing the problem. Salt. You've been very patient and quiet on the D.Va. Any steam and hot takes here?
Not really. I mean, I've been playing D.Va quite a lot this patch. I think she's a necessary evil. Like, I do understand she's quite strong with her E and her consistent damage and her health pool and the pill potential. But yeah, I think she's a necessary evil, and she is fine where she is.
Okay.
But I do agree. Her ult, I wouldn't say get back into mech quick. I guess, like, I don't know. It would be interesting for a total different rework, you know? I don't know. Like, I think being able to reset your health, or like nearly guaranteed health reset, I think is quite insane. Especially for someone who can then instantly re-eat, fly, and then also have, you know, 600 HP where half of it is armor. think that's quite strong to be reset. But I think that's
True.
why, like, in my opinion, Winston is in a good place with Primal because, you know, when he comes, whatever his health pool is out during Primal, when he comes out of Primal, he's then the percentage is the same, you know. So
Right.
I think resetting Diva's health, yeah, I think that's a little bit too strong. But I think a good rework would be nice for her bomb. I don't know, maybe more consistency with her kills, I guess, or you know, peeling. I'm not sure what they could do actually, but yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I'm gonna try and pick up the pace a little bit on these tanks now because we've taken a lot of you guys' time. So we're gonna try and be a little bit more prompt here. So up next, Doomfist. I'm gonna let Spilo start on Doomfist. I don't think I've let Spilo start on a hero. So Spilo, give me your thoughts on Doomfist.
I'm a hater and a lover at the same time. You know, I think like immediately in the alpha, we're like, yo, this is like super interesting to tank. But then immediately I'm like, power block. I'm like, oh no. Oh no. What is this ability? What is this ability? And it's such an important part of his kit because it's not just about the power punch, it's about buying time for your cooldown cycle to keep going. But I've always hated the whole idea that you get punished if you shoot the Doomfist while he's power blocking, or like your teammates can shoot it. And if the enemy team doesn't make a mistake and doesn't shoot your Doomfist power block, your Doomfist doesn't do as much damage. Like that whole like dynamic to me, everybody hates it. Nobody likes power block. It feels bad for the Doomfist if they don't shoot it. Obviously, and then it's really tricky to balance because an early Overwatch shoot.
Can I quickly interject and ask why you feel differently about that than say a Zarya bubble?
Because the difference between that and a Zarya bubble is that a Zarya can still take action and like go in aggressively. So basically, the way I look at Zarya bubble is what allows her to actually go out and do damage. At some point, you have to shoot the Zarya. Doomfist isn't actually being a threat while he's blocking. He's standing there. So you don't actually have any real motivation to shoot him at all. Whereas a Zarya who's walking forward with a bubble or without a bubble can kind of force people to shoot her. No, I think the analogy isn't perfect, but that's kind of where I'm rolling with. And I think what it leads to is this tricky balance where in early beta, Power Punch was like so strong. It was like ridiculously strong. And then Unpowered Punch was ridiculously weak. And so what ended up happening is like, I distinctly remember the Owl Scrims, it was like, oh, they have Punch, they have another ultimate. You know, it was just, and then now it's been nerfed to where it's like, it's not as useful. So it's like, it's not even as beneficial to charge it. I also don't like that they, they removed the slow from slam, which made it a lot harder for combo. But at the same time, I played up against that slow and it sucked because you got hit by slam and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm dead because I'm not going to be able to move. And it was ironic considering the fact that they removed so much CC from the game. And at the time of the beta, the alpha, he had 1, 2, 3 forms of CC with his ult, his slam, and his punch. And it's just like, I think Doomfist is like one of those characters that's like Wrecking Ball. He's very unique, very niche. There's just something super appealing about his kit. Super fun, super active, super dynamic. But I do feel like, again, like Wrecking Ball, he is a little bit too much feast or famine. Very easy to crowd control Doomfist. The HP pool is just not there. But when he's rolling, when you don't have that CC, it can also feel impossible to kill him. Not a character that I've unfortunately haven't put a lot of time into thinking how I would fix him. So I'm not going to give my opinion because my opinion is uneducated and stupid. But I do think that there's a couple of problems that it's too feast or famine. It's too feast or famine, and it's with like that with power block. It's like that with his ability to CC you. It's like that with your ability to CC him. Even his ultimate, right? Probably the worst tank ultimate in the game. Sometimes, most of the time, I would even say, but actually really good in other circumstances. And it just feels so messy to deal with that. I don't necessarily have a problem with his skill expression, skill ceiling. I think that's having some high skill characters is fine, but sometimes even being a really good Doomfist isn't good enough.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a tricky one. As there's a lot of discussion about like DPS Doomfist versus tank Doomfist, right? I see like QuakeDawn often like go off about Twitter about like I miss DPS Doomfist and the skill expression of DPS Doomfist, but then I think everyone forgets just how miserable he made support players in Overwatch 1. Like I remember multiple times I spoke to many different support content creators and I was like, all right, guys, you could delete one hero. Doomfist, before I finish the question. Doomfist, get that fucking guy out of here. So I think at least they've solved that, where it's like, I think he's less frustrating to play against than he was in Overwatch 1. But there are these other aspects of like, well, you know, his kit sometimes can be like that. I really enjoyed playing him, but I also have been on the other end where it's like, if I want to stop a Doomfist, it's like really easy. Like, I was playing a game on Shambhala the other day, and their Doomfist is wrecking us, and I was like, I'm just gonna go swap to Ana, and now his power block is a death sentence. It's like, you power block, I sleep you die, like goodbye. Like I sleep, nay, you die, goodbye. So it's like, it is a little bit clunky. I'm curious, Salt. I remember on the couple times I had you on the rank gauntlet, you often tended towards the Doomfist, not your trademark hog. How do you feel about the boy in Overwatch 2?
Well, I only picked Doomfist because chat voted, remember?
Oh,
Um,
yeah. And also you inverted your
um,
sends one time on Doomfist, but that was a whole other thing.
That was crazy. Yeah, that's when I had crazy high sense. So one little movement was, yeah. But no, I actually completed a unranked gem with him. I know it's not great, but I wanted to learn him because, in my opinion, I think he's one of the most strongest tanks right now in the game. I know Orisa's quite strong, yes, but I could argue that he's even better than Orisa. And people would like to sit here and say, "Oh, Hog counters him. You're brain rot, bro. You're a fucking idiot." You like genuinely, if you think Hog counters Doom, you're a fucking idiot. But yeah, I think the problem with Doomfist as a character is he has no downtime. He jumps in, right? He has another ability as an escape, but during when he's in, he also has a block, and you can't do anything to him, and then he's out. It's like, where is his downtime? Oh wait, his downtime is 2 seconds, and he's back again. That doesn't really make sense. For example, you said you play Ana, right? But what is another player supposed to do if they're not an Ana? If your role isn't support, I think, and then also, I think Doom is in the middle as if he is countered, it's a hard counter too. So it's very weird how he's just so dominant with no Sombra, but then it's the complete opposite when he has one counter. So I'm not sure how they could balance him. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure actually, but maybe they could reduce his block time so his entire block doesn't, count for when his other abilities come off cooldown. Does that make sense? Sorry, I'm really bad at explaining myself, by the way, guys. My bad. But
It's okay, dude. Take your time. Don't worry.
so he jumps in. Let's say that's 5 seconds, and he blocks, right? Then all his abilities count down, and then his abilities are up, so he can jump away again, like, or just continue going in. I think that's a bit too much. But I think what they should do in order to make him balance is either increase his cooldowns, but allow him to be more tankier, I guess.
Right.
Or have more kill potential. One of the.
Okay, fair enough. Like I said, I will try and speed us along a little bit, but Yeatle and Flats, any sort of bouncing off of what's been discussed on Doomfist?
So this is part Doomfist, part everything. We originally started off talking about why tank is not fun and things are kind of bad, and the difference between being the star player versus being the player everybody blames and stuff like that. I do want to be a little careful because I feel like this whole time we've gone through characters, we've been just talking about how to nerf them, like even more. And I feel like isn't like most of the characters like not that good right now, or at least they don't feel that good. I agree actually with the take of Doomfist actually is really really good. But here's the problem. The actual really fucking good Doomfists are like 1 in a million. Like they don't exist. There's like 10 of them on the whole ladder. So I mean, that's honestly, in my opinion, more of the problem with Doomfist more than anything is that the average player literally can't pick up Doom and play him. Like there's no way. If I picked up Doom right now, I'd be terrible. Yeah, he requires a ton of skill expression, and a lot of people like that, but I also want to be careful because like at what level you start gatekeeping characters where it's like they are so hard to play that nobody can play them, right? And then yeah, you have games where like I know what you're talking about, like that crazy Doomfist player, and you're like, dude, what do you do? Because like if let's say you're on tank, like how do you deal with Doomfist? It's like yeah, you can go like Orisa, but like the really good Dooms just kind of ignore you, right? Like they just go over your head and they're just like, yes, I'm out.
Yeah.
See you later. Where else do you go? You go Diva maybe, like yeah, you can eat the shots when they punch somebody into a wall, but you have to do so many other things on Diva, like you burn through your resources really quickly. So I think the reason why you don't see a lot of people complain about Doomfist very often is because he's so hard. You don't see good Doomfist that often. And so how do you buff him? I don't know. That's a scary question. and I know Doomfist players probably wouldn't like this, and I'm not saying this is like what you should do, but like this is my own personal take, is that you shouldn't have characters that have that high of a skill ceiling to where 99% of the player base cannot even play the character without feeding, or like break, or like you will lose the game like just by picking that character. And that's how you get people get really frustrated with their tank players and like, oh, tank diff, like whatever. And like this poor person's just trying to learn how to play Doom, but they can't because it's going to require so many hours and so many games, and things just kind of fall apart. So I don't actually know how to do anything about Doom. I agree though, it is kind of like, I don't know, a little weird to play against, and the whole power punch block thing. I'm not saying there's a way to fix it, and I'm not saying the Doomfist Overwatch 1 was better than Overwatch 2. I don't really have a dog in this fight, but I do wonder if the characters in it, like, does the character need any changes? Is he fine, or is it actually at the point where like only like 10 people can play him? So I don't know. It's
I will interject real quick. I know I can read what Spilo's mind. Skill floor is actually what you're talking about, not skill ceiling here, right? Because what you want is someone should be able to entry on Doomfist at the skill floor and still be all right. Whereas you're happy with the skill ceiling for the zebras of the world to still do their thing.
How much of it is how difficult the skill floor is versus just how easy it is to counter him.
Right.
I mean, that's the problem. I think it's too. I think we come back to Sombra and the Ana and the Torbjorn and the Orisa example. I don't think it's a Doomfist problem. I think Doomfist, if you can go out there and smash some abilities at the enemy team and you're not getting chain CC, you can get decent value out of the character. I think until they go. And I think again, he's just more victimized by that than maybe other tanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeatle, I'm gonna give you your say, and then we're gonna move on to the next tank.
Yeah, I don't have much. I think Doomfist is a better ball, and I think that he's in a pretty good spot. But I still think that like my beef is with immortality. That's my beef. I feel like they really got to do something more about immortality to make it a little bit harder. Because there's again, it comes back to there's just too many things that you make a high risk play, and you successfully achieve it. Like a powered up punch, you get the powered up punch, you hit the shots, but it gets cleansed like that. Like there's just too much of that. We can't have that. There needs to be a wind up, some kind of extra catch to it. But otherwise, I think Doomfist is mostly fine. Just I know when I played Doomfist, it was a little bit hard for me to like some Doomfist will get the powered up punch and they'll hit those shots, but the person that you punch will do like a head bobble and it's so hard to hit them. I feel like consistency there would be nicer, but hey, maybe it's a skill issue. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, hearing you talk, there's like a little mini epiphany that's like, I think one of the frustrations that you've been getting out a lot, Yeatle, is like with a lot of tanks, you're building up to a one moment that a lot of these immortalities negate. I think that's the difference, where it's like, where if you're a Kiriko or you're a BAP, your whole game isn't the one ability, right? You can do damage as Kiriko, you can do damage as BAP, you have an ult that have other utility, but you also have this thing where the tank, for example, is building their whole playstyle around, like the Doomfist. Your whole play is, okay, I'm slamming, I'm punching, I'm building my block. Now I got my charge punch, I'm ready. And then that one moment comes and it's negated. And that's probably where the frustration of a lot of tanking lies, is that a lot of it comes to set up for this one moment that then is taken away from you. And then you're like, oh, I got to start from zero. And then you're like, everything you did was useless. Is that fair? Is that something you agree with?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Because there's already like stuns and stuff. Like you could hit the sleep dart and that's clutch. Like you hit the sleep dart, it's a wind up. Like there's more to it. You're hitting a really fast target. But again, the cleanse, the immortality field, it's just a simple throw it at the ground, throw in that general area, and in the flick of a finger, it's there. It's too easy to get that amount of value.
Yeah. And another final word, which is like, as someone who plays a lot of Doomfist recently, is like, the other frustrating part of Suzu is that you can charge your punch and then you go through them and you feed. Which is like a really horrible feeling, because you're like, okay, I'm gonna anticipating hitting this punch and stopping here, and then boom, and then oh my god, I just went through them, I'm in their backline, I have nothing, I'm dead. Like you're just like, okay, well, so that, I mean, it's been talked about before, but something they really should, the intangibility of it is something they should really consider. Okay, we're gonna head over now to JunkerQueen. Salt. JunkerQueen was another hero you played when we had you on the gauntlet. Give me your thoughts on the queen.
As others said, like, I was the best JunkerQueen player. No, I played her a lot. I know a lot about her. I got very high elo of her. I think she's a very good hero and she's in a very good spot in general. I know Orisa's very dominant right now, but I think Queen's fine. I find, I guess, the only issue is maybe her hitbox that people have with trouble hitting her, I guess. But I think she's in a perfect spot. She's satisfying to play. She's satisfying to watch. And if you play correctly, you deserve everything you get with her, you know? But yeah, that's what I got to say. She's great where she is, I guess. The only thing where she sucks is, I guess, going against snipers. That's pretty much it. But then that's just a comp issue.
Flats, how do you feel?
I agree with most of it. I think that they cooked pretty well with the way they changed her shout, and kind of like made it a little bit more selfish and made it a little bit more like about her play instead of just like enabling everybody else, which I thought was a good change. I will say, I think that Queen is probably one of the characters that falls victim to the checklist thing like really well. If they have like Ana Kiri, it's like, okay, if I have an ult coming up here, I have to make sure Suzu's gone. And then I also have to make sure Sleep Dart's gone because you sit there long enough that you're probably going to get slept out of it. Or if they have a Cass and it's like, Cass is not that good right now. Like let's not get it twisted. But like if you have a JunkerQueen and you pick Cass, you're going to do okay. Because if she pops her shout and tries to run at you, stick, back away. If she goes to pop her ult, stick, that's over. So, and also Zarya is really good right now. So I don't see like, I think JunkerQueen can kind of get shut down by Zarya pretty well, at least at the moment. So I agree. I think she's in a great spot. I don't think she needs any buffs or nerfs, but in terms of like how much fun to play, I think she's super fun with her knife, her carnage, her shout, all that stuff. But the way you interact with other characters really cannot be a fun time, especially if you're like full HP. You go for that big ult, like they happen to waste Suzu super early, full HP, and then like they had a Sojourn Mercy and a Widow, and you literally just get deleted before you even move. Now it's like, and it's not just like one instance. There's at least 7 or 8 different ones, and that can probably affect her a little bit. But overall, I think she's fine.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I think they did an amazing job with JunkerQueen, like making this hero like it's the typification I think of what an Overwatch 2 tank should look like. Super fun, super rewarding. You never feel I never felt bad losing to JunkerQueen in the sense of like this is a cheesy, lame bullshit. It's like very hard to execute. So I can't imagine someone being mad that they got outplayed by JunkerQueen. Spilo or Yeatle, again, feel free to raise your hands if you got something to say, but anything to add on JunkerQueen?
I think mostly fine. I think like has a little bit of mobility, has a little bit of range, can be not just a short range character, has that inherent speed boost, has the ability to pull people closer with her knife. It's a skill shot. You don't feel cheesed if you get hit by it. Mostly just what Flat said. The only thing that's annoying about JunkerQueen is not JunkerQueen, but some of the things that she has to deal with, like with Suzu, Sleep Dart, things like that. There's ways of playing around it a little bit with speed, but some limiting factors. But in terms of Overwatch 2, dynamic, mechanically engaging, yeah, no complaints.
Yeatle?
Yeah, pretty much everything they said. She's fine. I think the only thing me personally I enjoyed in the beta when she had a shorter cooldown because I felt like it was a more aggro, fast playstyle, minus like everybody else getting it because I know that's what made it broken. Everybody got the shout. I liked being the JunkerQueen that had a shout on a short cooldown because it made me feel like I can make plays a lot more.
You'd shorten the
that's
duration
it.
and shorten the cooldown.
Yeah,
That would be interesting.
Yeah,
that's
I
pretty
mean,
much it.
I know they're reluctant
yeah.
to add like complexity. They even talked about it in today's blog where they were like, "Oh, we don't like complexity," but you could also have added things where it's like the shout lasts less long on others, or like has less benefit to others versus yourself, right? Stuff like that. So, but I know they don't like that in general because it's like I guess it's unintuitive for the player to know that that's the thing. Anyways, okay, good to hear a tank that everyone's largely happy with.
Well,
Here's
what if it didn't give overheal? What if it just gave speed? Like they shortened the cooldown, but it just gave speed. I feel like that
or just
be a nice
overhealth to
middle
her,
ground.
or just overhealth to her, maybe, right?
Yeah. So, I forgot about
I mean,
that.
if it was
Yeah.
self, yeah, I think that would be nice because it should be what I don't know. As soon as she shouts, she just would get one shot, I guess, or like burnt way too quick.
Yeah, she definitely still needs the self health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but great to hear that everyone's largely happy. Here's one everyone's largely unhappy with, Orisa. Let's go to Flats first. Flats, Orisa.
I'm sticking to it. I think she's the best tank to pick, but I don't think that she's OP. At least right now. I think that if there wasn't other stuff gatekeeping what is good versus Orisa comps, I think that people wouldn't be as annoyed with her. I think she definitely is strong and is a good wall, but at least in my career of Overwatch, tank has always been about making the first move, being the aggressor, fight planning, forcing cooldowns, whatever it is. Orisa doesn't really have to do any of that. You just stand there and not die. And like, if anything, just reject their tank from playing the game. I can't tell you how many times I've just sat on a corner and they're playing, Rein or Ramattra or JunkerQueen or something, and they just keep trying to walk by me, and then I spinning spear them back, and then they get close, and then I spear them out, and then they come, I back away maybe a little bit, have my spear spinny back up, put them back around the corner, and then they're on the corner there. I bet what, like 12 seconds at this point. They're low on resources. They go to walk. I pop fortify, and I just follow them into my team. And then when they get close to a wall, I spear them, and they die. And it's like, well, I hope you had fun playing the video game there. But like, that's not me making plays. That's me standing there just being a wall. And I think like Winston Diva would be pretty good. If like Bastion wasn't hardcore gatekeeping it right now, right? Like, is a good example, at least for Winston. And being able to like just ignore the Orisa, just go over the top, And Orisa, I think, does have a place in the game kind of as like a anti-brawl character. And I think there was a meta in Overwatch League where it was like kind of like some teams were playing it a few months ago, where it was like you had the brawl teams versus like the anti-brawl teams that would like play Orisa. I might be not totally right on that, but I think that she can have a place, but everything else has gotten to the point where you shut down everything else. And so you have the problem of why pick something else because it's the best one. But I don't think it's the best one because of what she can do. It's because it's the only thing that doesn't get destroyed by everything else. And I think that's really bad. So I don't know how to solve it without just nerfing the shit out of Orisa. But then we're kind of back to square one where everybody else is just exploding and like still having a really bad time,
Yeah. Any of you guys have any thoughts? I think from my end, I think just I'm on the delete Orisa bandwagon. Not literally, but like I hate this hero. It's like, it feels like someone I think said like the Winston's like the lifeblood of the game. She's the opposite. She's like, when Orisa's good, that means shit has gone wrong. Like shit has gone bad if people are running Orisa. She's kind of like the Moira of like the tank, where it's like, it's inoffensive if this character is fine for like an entry level, but like with the minute this character is getting played by everyone, like something fucked up. So
it's a little bit associative, because you associate her with bad menace, but I don't think she's the enabler of the bad menace. Like
she's like I said, when she's getting played, it means bad stuff is happening. The way that when Winston's getting played, it means good stuff's happening.
And she makes it worse, because she's got her own form of CC too, which is
yes, she's very obnoxious. I think to go up against, like as in the tank matchup, she's very obnoxious.
It's tricky though, because like her jab. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go.
I was gonna say Javelin is like really fun, and Javelin spin is fun, and like there's aspects of the character that I think are kind of fun. I just think that they kind of miss the mark with like, again, she is pretty one-dimensional. Like that's something that I keep bringing up, but she is pretty one-dimensional. The reason that she's not just good at focusing tank, that's all that she can do. She can't, like, I remember when I was inting so many diamond games in like season 1 because I was trying dive Orisa, when they first released it. I was like, I'm gonna figure out this character. I'm just like diving, and it was like really bad. Like it was really hard. It was really good if I could get there, but I couldn't get there 99% of the time. And I think that's part of her problem is that like when we talk about tank focus, yeah, she's pretty good at focusing tank, but that's all she can really do. Her range is really not very good. She doesn't have any form of like consistent mobility. So all she does is survive and beat the crap out of the enemy tank. So and like Flats is saying, she also is really good at dealing with the crowd control and the utility that we've already established as a major issue. Hack, not as big of an issue outside of her ultimate. Sleep Dart, not an issue. Nade, a lot less of an issue when you can fortify and just buff it out. Any form of boop CC, even though it's nerfed, it's so much easier. So I think like we look at Orisa as like, I think there are aspects of her character that are fun, but she needs mobility. She needs mobility. And also stuff like, this might be a hot take, but you should be able to headshot through Fortify. You should be able to headshot through Fortify. I think that's just a fundamentally stupid thing. Taking away skill shots, like there's no way that makes any sense to anybody. I like that you can overheat her, like it doesn't overheat her gun. I like the fact that you can like your CC immune. I like the dynamic there, but you should be able to headshot her. You should be able to headshot her, and you should be able to javelin spin in the air, helicopter straight up. I don't care. Give her something, Give her something,
Helicopter Orisa.
You ever something and make Javelin have a smaller hitbox so it actually feels like you don't feel cheesed by it? Because it feels amazing to land Javelin. I love Javelin. But I mean, there's just, I think it's like I said, it's just she's more of a damning commentary on the metas that are popular when she's being played. And I don't think she's a fundamentally flawed character if you just gave her mobility and reduced her survivability or situational survivability. Like just being able to headshot through Fortify. There you go. That's a huge part of her problem right there.
Yeatle, Salt, anything you want to say on Orisa?
I mean, I wouldn't say she's OP, but she is very strong right now. I think the best way to go with her is increase her cooldowns, because I think the rotating of abilities just so she can live forever is quite stupid in general. But yeah, that's just my opinion.
Actually,
So wall climb.
small thing. Y'all notice in the last patch notes they made it so that even if you cancel Fortify, like it's still the same cooldown. Why does cancel Fortify even a thing? Like why did
Yeah.
they do
Yeah, I
that?
know.
Like
I think they did it due to the
Or
interaction
the
with
reduced speed.
Hoggle.
That's what it is.
Right, so
If
you're not
fortified, you have a
slowed.
movement penalty.
Right, so you're not slowed down if you fucked up at the wrong time or whatever.
Yeah.
True.
I had a problem at the beginning of Overwatch 2, where like when we had that Orisa meta, because like I was used to Overwatch 1 where it's like I fortified already,
Yeah.
and I'm waiting for it to come back and I'm spamming it and then I insta cancel. I just get so mad.
It's kind of the next time we talk about Ramattra with the Ramattra ult when you could accidentally insta cancel the
was funny.
annihilation. That was always a bit tragic when you're like you'd see like a flicker on the Ramattra and you're like, wait, did he just ult and instantly cancel it? Oh, okay. But I'm gonna head it to Yeatle first. Yeatle, you've been a great Ramattra player. Have you been playing him recently? How do you feel about him right now?
Nope, I completely stopped playing him. I played him when he came out for like I think like 2 seasons, and I was loving him. Got rank 1 with him. It was great. But slowly but surely, it just came to realize that like it's not fun to just like get slept and anti. Like I can shield one of them. I can shield the sleep. I can shield the anti, but I can't shield them both. One of them's gonna get me. But I think I just basically stopped playing Ramattra. The next season I played Zarya. Get to that in a second. And it just because like again, there's just things that you can't outplay, and it's really annoying. But yeah, for the case of Ramattra specifically versus Ana, which Ana I feel like gatekeeps some tanks and just really is just hell to play against. Like, no.
But you feel happy relatively with like how he is himself? Like you think he's fine?
Oh,
It's
as
just that
a
these other
hero?
things, yeah, and a character.
Yeah. For the most part, I think he's fine. I think it's just other things that make him unfun to play.
I'll be curious to when I next week when I talk to support players, I'll be curious. I'll feed back to them and be like, look, guys, a lot of the tank players are saying a lot of these tanks are fine. It's just these like other things that make them miserable. I'll be curious what their response is, where they're like, well, we need those things, you motherfucker. Like otherwise the tanks kill us. So yeah, it's interesting how this kind of like exchange of back and forth of like, okay, well you need that, but we need this, and somehow a lot of people are left unhappy in the process. Salt, you played a lot of Ramattra as well. I think you also got rank 1 with Ramattra. How do you feel about the hero?
Yeah, he's quite fun, but he's just like very one-dimensional. Like he just, you do the exact same thing, I guess, and then yeah, you win, I guess. But I agree with Yeatle. He just gets fucked by supports, and him not being meta as well is just there's just no point, especially where Orisa's meta. But yeah, I think he will come back in time when other stuff gets nerfed. So I think he's still quite healthy where he is, and he doesn't need a buff or a nerf.
Fair. Spilo Flats, any thoughts on Ramattra?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's in like the worst spot, like balance wise. But like I'm so sick of this cycle of a next tank becomes meta, and it's like no tanks got buffed. Like no fucking tanks got to change, and then something else becomes meta, and the new tank that becomes meta because of the other changes. Oh my god, it's the worst thing on the planet. We need to nerf everything, and it's like that will happen to Ramattra again. Because there's still people out there that think his annihilation is the most broken thing of all time. I think those people are kind of dumb. I think that it's actually not that hard to play against, and when it is hard to play against, that's when it's supposed to be hard to play against. Like I remember back in season 2, season 3, even season 4 a little bit, when I had games where I'm like, okay, we need to win one good fight here. Like the end of Escort or Hybrid, like we have one fight. We have 2 minutes. I picked Ramattra every time. You know why? Because yeah, we might lose for 2 minutes, but on that last fight, when I got Annihilation, I saved it. I waited for this moment to have this opportunity to use this ultimate in this exact situation, and I planned for it 2 minutes in advance. I didn't go back to spawn and counter swap somebody. I planned 2 minutes in advance. Okay, when we get to the end of the game, if they have certain support ultimates or whatever, I have to play for those. But if they don't have those, I'm free to look for this ultimate because it's really powerful and someone has to contest me. And it's like, I made that conscious decision. I made that play way ahead of time. And I know it can be frustrating to play against, but that is Ramattra, Ramatra's ultimate is supposed to be impactful. And unless people are next to him, it doesn't do anything. It goes away in 3 seconds, and it's just like a purple cloud goes poof, and it's like, I don't think he's bad. I think that they all said, he gets really, really hard countered, and especially right now with Orisa meta, you're gonna get speared out of your block all the time, and we haven't actually got to test how he feels since the changes. The armor change stack, how they changed the way it works, armor plus block plus his fortify, whatever. He might actually be too squishy in some metas in the future. We don't know, because a lot of people always complain, oh, Ramattra sits there and block. Do you think the Ramattra wants to sit there and block and do nothing? Do you genuinely think that? So I think he's perfectly fine. I think, maybe could use a tweak or two if other things happen and he falls behind. But I just know the day is coming where a Ramattra meta is going to show up again, and everyone's going to scream for nerfs, even though it's not his fault.
Spilo, I want to take it to you on Ramattra, and then I also want you to go over to Sigma, because I'm going to go to the bathroom. So talk Ramattra and then talk Sigma
good.
and IVRB.
Sounds good. All right, I'm a bit of a Ramattra hater. I think the character is like Salt said, is just too one-dimensional, and I think balance-wise, he's relatively balanced, I suppose. But I find him just so one-dimensional. I think his Omnic form was a pretty big failure. I think the cooldowns are way too long. I think the weapon feels too inconsistent, too OP in certain circumstances, too underpowered in others. I was always felt with his shield, it should be half or less in terms of the HP, but probably half the cooldown as well. Just let him actually move, let him actually play around the crowd control that he struggles with, and so much more. I just find the cycle of basically let me try to get to my Nemesis form as quickly as I possibly can and actually find value. I just find that to be kind of a miss, because it's cool having this whole the first tempo tank A then B then A then B, but really the reality of the situation is we're just playing for Nemesis form, and I think that was kind of a miss. And while I don't find Annihilation to be broken, I do find it to be kind of dull. I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of the way his abilities work. I like the design. I just don't feel in execution he's as interesting as he could be. But maybe that's just me.
True, he is a tempo tank. Don't forget.
Yeah, tempo tank. You guys know what tempo means? It's a tempo tank. So use cooldowns and then you don't do anything. It's never in Overwatch have you ever seen somebody use cooldowns and then wait. No, you guys know. Brand new concept. Let me teach you guys about how the game works. We're talking about tempo SVP. Happened. It's a new concept.
I ran in and already, yeah, tempo tank. It pissed me the fuck off when I remember when they launched that. So
that was funny as shit.
Tempo. All right.
I think it was the marketing team getting in the way, to be honest, more than anything. I think the marketing team were we need a slogan.
That's never happened.
We need a slogan. Anyways, so did you get your thoughts out of Ramattra?
We're done. I think we're done with Ramattra. I don't know.
Okay, then go ahead and talk me through Sigma then,
okay.
Spilo.
He's really fun. I do think that he has range going from. He doesn't have the mobility, but he's missing out a little bit on the mobility. So he definitely feels like, okay, can we just ignore, just for the sake of this conversation, I'm just going to ignore Circuit Royale because I freaking hate that map. It's Sigma's map, but that's the map problem, not a Sigma problem. I think Sigma's problem is that because of that lack of mobility, he's not able to consistently take the trades that he wants. So sometimes, if you've ever played Sigma on King of the Hill, you legitimately feel like you're trolling, you're throwing. He's not fast, he's not quick, he's not tanky enough to trade with backline fast enough so that if you eventually have to go to point for point pressure and then you end up dying. I don't know. I don't think we necessarily need every tank to be perfectly viable in every circumstance, but I still feel like he's a little too niche heavy because I don't know. I don't want to. His shield doesn't need a buff, but I do feel like he's a little slow.
Fair enough. Yeatle,
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
You brought up a really good point. I don't think I've ever seen a Sigma. If I have, it's been a handful of times. Ever on King of the Hill outside of Mecha
No.
Base,
Yeah.
I can't remember it. I can't remember seeing a Sigma on that map. So I think Sigma does have a problem of just like he's really good at poke, but he's kind of a dive target, and his team can get brawled as well. Like he's got 2 weak points, and it's because of his mobility. That's the big thing. Yeah.
Winston can't beat any tank in a 1v1. Winston can't really beat Sigma, but when Sigma's like the one tank that I'm like,
He's
it's
got a good
diving
shot.
him. He's all right, right? And like that's kind of damning for the Sigma.
Yeah. Go ahead. Let's go to Salt. Salt, go ahead. Give me your take on Sigma.
I agree, but I don't even think he needs to be good on King of the Hill maps. He's really good on payload maps and control. Well, not control point, but you know, like taking the first point. I guess Blizzard World, Icon World first map he's quite decent. Bollywood, he's quite decent. I think in general he's quite decent hero. He has a lot to his kit. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think they need to change him. I just think he's just a hero that doesn't fall into that fast pace scenario, and that's okay, you know. I think more heroes should be like where they're made for a certain circumstance or a certain playstyle, and that's okay. Like he can. He's not the one shot. He's not the aggressor, but he's definitely a protect or healing or whatnot on certain maps.
I've actually really enjoyed playing Sigma recently. Like just before I stopped playing tank, I found myself gravitating to Sigma just because he's actually one tank that's quite reliably like completely doesn't really care what the rest of his team is doing, or at least I found it this way, where you can kind of just like you just kind of sit there and you, as long as I think you have time and like you have the ability to be patient on this particular scenario, I think Sigma's great. Because when you have like 30 seconds to just keep chipping away, eventually you start hitting rocks and getting kills. The problem is when that isn't allowed, right? When it's like either the game mode, as we talked about King of the Hill, or like the compositions are speeding the game up too much, where you're like, oh, I'm trying to chip away, and then their team just like ran at mine and killed them before like my volleys even did anything. But in situations where I'm like, okay, my team is useless, I'm just going to stand here Sigma and just start fighting stuff, and then eventually the damage will tell. Like, I've actually enjoyed him on Flashpoint, surprisingly. You know, we're talking about King of the Hill not being good, but I actually found him quite fun on Flashpoint because I felt like there's a lot of flank angles. So there's a lot of places where you can just kind of stand at a slight off angle and just poke away a Sigma, and then whatever whatever else is doing. But I don't know if you... Yes, it is. It's more open and more flexible, and there isn't the need to anchor on point, because in a lot of the King of the Hill maps, it's like a very narrow area, and this is the point here, and if they force point, there's very few ways into it, whereas that's not necessarily the case on Flashpoint. So, Flats, I'm curious if you've had any experience with Sigma recently.
I mean, as much as every GM player has, where you get Circle Royale and you're like, cool, I'm playing Sigma this game.
Yep.
I do think he doesn't feel that bad. I think Sigma actually feels pretty decent against like Bastion, you know, because you do have a few extra tools to deal with him, and there's a lot of Bastion flying around. But at the same time, I think about to myself, if Circle Royale just had a bug and got taken out of the game tomorrow, how often would I see a Sigma? Probably not very often. I don't think people are going to really play him. There's not really a point. But I also don't think he's bad. I just think that he had a few small like micro nerfs. Like they did a few things. One of the more impactful ones was taking away his one-shot combo with his rock left click. Not saying they need to really totally bring it back, but I think that's also another example of, you know, tank decay, where everybody kind of got power creeped and the tanks kind of got power nerfed. So it's like, yeah, I don't think he's bad design-wise. I don't think he's bad at all. I think that it's fine that certain tanks don't get played on certain maps. Like, you know, in Overwatch 1, we never thought about playing Sigma on Control to play Sigma. We played Double Shield with Sigma. Like, but if you played Control and you weren't going to play Double Shield, you didn't play Sigma. Like, very rarely, if ever. You'd play like your Rhine Brawl maps, or you'd pick your like Ball maps. Like Ball is really good in Control. You know, whether it was like Ball Hog, or if you did go to the Ball Sigma variant, but like, you know, I don't even know if like it's like, okay, we're playing Oasis here, let's play Ball Sig, you know, it's like, yeah, did you really do that? I don't think so. So I don't think there's anything wrong with him, but I think it's just a classic case of kind of just got a few small nerfs, so he doesn't feel that impactful except on those couple maps. And I don't know. I guess that comes down to design philosophy. Like, are you okay with only playing certain tanks on certain maps? And that is the way you want to do it, like a map-based meta, which I don't think is the worst. Or, do we start to look at it and just go, hey, like maybe he got one or two, maybe too many small micro nerfs, and give him a small one back, and now he's not just Circuit Royale, he's also back to Junkertown, because Junkertown used to be the Sigma map as well. But I don't see Sigma very often on Junkertown anymore. I'll see Orisa, I'll see Zarya, I will see not a whole lot of ball, but sometimes on first people play ball if the like Widow's really good on your team. But yeah, like I just might be one of those spots where you don't really think about it because you still see him on certain maps.
Yeah, I think the other thing I want to mention is alt feels a little bit clunky now. I think in Overwatch 1 his alt made more sense, but in Overwatch 2 I whiff like 9 out of 10 of my ults. I'm not gonna lie, it's a skill issue.
Brutal.
It's a skill issue, but like it's just so easy.
Suzu.
Exactly, it's so easy to like run away from it, and like you're never gonna catch more than 2 people max, and it's so easy for those 2 people to be saved if you catch them.
Liverpool too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, by the way, I saw the funniest thing. In one of my games, Sigma was ulting and his life pulled him and he was invulnerable. Like his thing still went off. I tried to sleep him or something, and he's just like he was just invulnerable while getting life ripped while ulting. So I was like, this is a odd interaction I never thought about. But yeah, so I think there's room for thought with Sigma, but as you guys have mentioned, it's like he suffers from the problem a lot of tanks do, which is they're always fighting to be the best at a thing. And if you're not the best at a thing, there's like no reason to be there. And that's inherently going to be a problem unless we really work at that issue.
Monko?
Yeah, I know Sam's already like 5v5 problem, 5v5 problem. Probably somewhere.
I mean, yeah, a lot of these issues are because of 5-5, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, Yeatle?
Bring back his one shot. I mean, it's like one of the most fair one shots in the game. It has a wind up. You literally use cover, get healed, and you don't die. I don't know why they took that way.
Yeah, it's a
I feel
slow
like it's a
one shot
simple one.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not only is it
Agreed.
you have to land that and then the
Yeah.
volley afterwards, which can often go wrong, right? Because it's like sometimes one of the 2 misses and you're like, oh shit.
Or someone walks
They
in front
fall
of
off
it.
an
like-
arc.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a fair ask. Okay, let's head over to our second last tank then, Winston. We've talked a fair amount of him in passing, but Yeatle, you go first. Give me your thoughts on the monkey.
I'm having a brain fart right now. Can someone else go?
Okay. Spilo, Winston's been very dominant in Overwatch League. Any thoughts?
Because he has a ridiculous skill ceiling. More tanks should aspire to be designed like him, to be honest with you. I think anytime we see a Winston meta, I mean, obviously having a Winston meta for 7 months in the Overwatch League was hit or miss for a lot of viewers. But that was as much enabled by like Flats was saying, was as much enabled by what was going on besides the tank, right? In terms of why Winston was being played. Great hero, great design, very healthy skill ceiling, very healthy skill curve. More tanks should be like him. No comments. That's it.
And yet the frustration, I think, and I'm going to take this to Flats now, the frustration I think I heard a lot of tank players play is with Winston is that in solo queue, he's so easy to counter. And he's so easy to, like, counter pick.
Well, to be fair, right now, I think the thing that really screws him more than anything is Bastion. I think Bastion, he did just get the nerf to the shift, like
Armor heal.
Yeah, the armor, because like Winston notoriously has always been really bad against armor. Armor doesn't behave the same way, but back in the day, you used to punch the armor off because like you would do more damage by punching than by left clicking to try to like knock characters' armor off. And Bastion has armor on top and then also has ironclad. So like you would try to go for their backline or try to go to make a play. And then even if the Bastion was taking poke on the way in and you like let's say you were landing somewhere near him and you saw that you'd taken a little bit of damage. The second those supports go to look at each other, so they're going to heal each other, the Bastion doesn't need healing. He healed himself, plus he has ironclad, plus he's going to start shredding your bubble, and you don't have time to get another jump to get out. You're dead most of the time. And that's not including the fact that you probably got slept, or you got naded, or they Suzu'd for a second, so you're not doing damage for a second or two in there, or you got whip-shotted by the Brig, or the Brig pop rally, and now you're doing absolutely fuck all. Never mind getting bashed / just having an extra 100 armor. / Bap just probably jumps away, or he has his shift, because Bap basically has 3 effective health pools with his lamp, his shift if he's below 50 HP, and just full health instantly. Plus his original health pool, so you ain't getting him half the time. And plus it's like a mini Soldier 76. So, but like Winston's good. Even with all those things, but just like when there becomes one too many, it becomes a little bit difficult to deal with, at least in ranked like solo queue play. Even like something like Reaper, right? Like, every silver TikTok player says, oh, Winston, I go Reaper. A good Winston player ain't too scared of a Reaper. Yeah, it's gonna be ass, and then for a fact he chasing your ass. Like, it's not gonna be fun. But then once you leave, well, Reaper does fuck all because he's an up close character. Bastion doesn't have that problem. Bastion still has the range. Even in his recon mode, he does good poke, good damage. Reaper doesn't do that. He needs to be up close. He needs to be rushing in. He needs to be enabled some way to do that, or having them come to him. So, I'm just saying, like, I think Winston always has been the staple character of Overwatch, and it's like when Winston's good, the game feels pretty good. And I think that certain things can kind of like make it better or worse. I think that's why originally, at least in my opinion, why Brig got the ult rework, because like Winston was so good, and also giving her they also did it was like, oh, we don't think rally's that impactful, even though the new rally's insane, at least in my opinion. But I think Winston could return again. I don't think he needs any changes. But if the current state of the game is going to continue this way, like this is the way our balance philosophy is, he might need a change. But I think that's going the wrong direction at that point.
Right. Salt, you kind of were shaking your head and nodding at points. How do you feel about Winston?
Yeah, I think he's a great character. I think he's fun to play. He has very good, very high choice making skill. Not mechanically straining, but unless you're juggling. I don't know. I feel like we had a Winston meta, but it kind of just gets old very quickly. I guess he is fun to play. Don't get me wrong, but he just gets very old, and I don't know if it's just me or what, but. Yeah, right now the game, how he works, it's I don't know how many people have played Winston here recently, but Pylon, if you've tried zapping Pylon, you need 3 full charges to kill it. And that is fucking ridiculous, especially with Torp Turret, Symmetra. Oh my god, it's like Bob the Builder, you're just struggling here. Yeah. And on top of that, when you dive someone, obviously, I'm not saying you should be able to out DPS supports, but when you're nanoed and you're shooting someone, and
super clip,
yeah, that clip is a bit, yeah.
I made a TikTok about it. You should see the comments. It is wild. It is legitimately like the dumbest replies you could imagine.
It's just a bunch of people who just don't understand the game. So he's very frustrating to play, especially when you get 3 kills or 4 kills and you basically carry the team. Then you look back, everyone's dead. And you're gonna lose because the last person you have to go against is Sebastian. You're just there like, oh fuck, and then you just got to reset all over again. Personally, I think if they're gonna keep him like this, they could either implement a little bit more DPS, just a little bit more, or this is a wild take. Not a lot of people agree with it. If he zaps you for 3 seconds or 4 seconds straight, I think you should get stunned for 0.5 seconds or a second. I know that's quite OP, but it's just ridiculous how everything against Winston is so strong. Why not have something else that you can fight against, especially when supports can do a lot? But that's just my take. It doesn't have to be a long stun, but an interrupt would be nice. Or just add something to him if he's gonna.
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be a damage burst instead of a stun, because I know people hate stuns.
Yeah, even that. It doesn't have to be a stun. It's just he needs something. Because everything else is just so much damage to him. Especially when you get hit by a Lari ult and then Bastion looks at you. Oh my god, you're going to get nuked.
Yeah, Liari definitely is a problem for Winston, because you just kind of get screwed. You jump, she shout, or does it a roar, whatever it's called, and you runs away, puts the pylon in a spot where you can't hit both. It's kind of like the lamp thing as well. It's like you can't hit both now, so they're gonna shoot you while you're shooting the thing, and then when you're done, the shift is back up. So it's like there are those problems. But Yeatle, how do you feel? You feel like we kind of got a range of feelings here. Some people feel like it's very good. maybe
I
some.
think overall he's like a really strong and safe hero, and I think that the balance team should look at what's working with him. And the reason why he's very strong and good, I think, is because he has a lot of outplay potential to his counters. Like usually, just one counter is not going to be enough to take him out of commission. Like Ana has sleep dart, right? He can bubble to sleep midair, or like he can get a feel for the Ana to bubble it off. Or if they have Brig with a whip shot, same story. Like I think there's outplay potential, which is big, and a lot of the tanks should get something more similar. Like I don't think Winston really has a problem until there's multiple counters coming at him, which at that point it's kind of like, all right, they're playing a comp, you're probably not, right?
Right.
So that's my take.
It happens almost instantly though. Like I think like the Aspen clip, you know the Aspen one, the Brig one. Yeah, I think of that. And like Bragana is really good with dive and against dive. So, you already got 3 or 4, just with Bragana, like depending on how you want to count it. Then you put in the DPS ones potentially now. And then you also put in like, are they playing Winston? Or are they going to play Diva? Because they're like, oh, I'm going to do like Peel style. And it can go downhill really quick. Even though he's strong, like, are you actually having fun on Winston? I don't know. The answer is up in the air.
For me, it's just the ease of DPS swaps. I know we talk a lot about support, but I feel like Winston has ways of playing around support stuff. And besides like Sombra hack, you can avoid Reaper, yeah, but like we said, as soon as it starts to like multiply up, I agree with Flats. Bastion is the #1 offender. But even stuff like Torbjorn can be difficult because not only can he's very difficult to dive, but he can also take angles and pressure you out at range, like a Bastion. There's no like real weak point there. And again, the problem goes that they're like, how hard do I have to work to outplay you versus somebody can just swap to this hero and find value. I think that's the issue. So again, I think Winston's probably fine, but it's just like there's a couple of picks that are just simply too easy and they make everybody sad. And it's not an accident that we keep bringing up the same characters. It's the same.
I think during World Cup, I had Krondop on my stream to talk about like games and stuff like that. And he was telling me that during World Cup, there was, because like they didn't have a whole lot of time, there was 2 styles of play. There was the good teams, they'd run dive, and then the bad teams would run anti-tank comps. And they would just like stack like Torb Reaper or like Sojourn Reaper or whatever, and would just all in kill the tanks as fast as they could, like the Winston or Ramattra. That was their whole game plan. And a lot of those teams actually won a lot of games just off that game plan of just like, we are just going to all pick whatever screws their tank the most, kill him, and we'll win. And it worked.
Well, it's sad that worked at such a high level too, which is, I'm sure a lot of tank players would be like, man, it fucking works in my elo, works there. Like, what's going on here? But again, I think we've touched on in many parts why that happens. I think we've talked about a lot of the offending heroes and abilities that make that a thing. So let's head over to our final tank to discuss then is Zarya. I'm going to take it to Yeatle again. Yeatle, you said last time when I put you on the spot with Winston, you were like, oh, give me a moment. What about Zarya? How do you feel about Zarya?
Yeah, I think Zarya is actually like Zarya was the last tank that I played last season. I've just been playing support this season, and she's one of the more fun tanks because she has an answer to like all the BS in the game. Like she can just bubble, sleep, boop, and nade anything. Like it's really strong. But overall, I think again she has a lot of outplay potential against all these things, which is what makes tanks fun when you just like don't have to just eat shit the whole time. Um, and I guess the last thing I'd say about Zarya is I still think double bubble is OP. Like she was, I think she was meta in like the beta of Overwatch 2, and it's because she could like double bubble Reaper, which is crazy, and then they nerfed it
No cooldown
right
at all, like back
to back.
bubbles. Yeah.
And I personally believe that she shouldn't be able to double bubble herself because again, like maybe like a 0.5 second, maybe 1 second, you have to feel it out. I think there should be a punish window of like, okay, Zarya use bubble. If she doesn't go to cover immediately, like a good player would do, go to cover when you don't have invincibility. You should be able to shoot at her if she's out in the open. But just the fact that she might have another bubble, you don't know. So it's like, I that's the only thing I'll say. I think, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it can be hard to track because the third bubble's always coming, right? And you're not exactly sure when that's coming. I think Flats, you talked a lot about this in the past, the sort of the triple bubble potential of Zarya. How do you feel about her right now?
So I've actually been playing a lot of Zarya myself. When I don't get forced onto Orisa or get yelled at to go on Orisa. And I think I found way more value just bubbling my teammates half the time now. People like, unless I'm like full charge, right? If I'm full charge, I'll walk up with my own bubbles and I'll try to delete somebody. But at least in the beginning of the fight, I got like a Genji that's like really playing aggressive, or a Sojourn that's really playing aggressive, and that bubble is so big. Plus, it gives you 45 charge if you get a full full burst on it, which is nice because like being at 90 charge is kind of a little bit better than being at 80 charge at the beginning of a fight. And half the time, if it's an Orisa on the other side, the Orisa's not playing the run at me game and try to kill me. They're playing the sit there and avoid me from doing anything game. So I sit there and kind of just wait till I'm full charge and have bubbles, and then I do I have 1.5 bubbles after bubbling somebody, start walking up, then they force my second bubble, and they're like, oh, that's both bubbles. But guess what? My third one was right on the edge of the horizon there. And guess what? I got my third bubble, and you all in thinking I only had 2, but I have 3, and then I kill whoever all into me, survive, and then we keep rolling. So it kind of goes to Yeatle's point there. It's like you never know. It's so hard to keep track of it at this point. Plus, I don't know. We haven't seen it that much, but I think it's because Bastion's so good. I was pretty sure we were gonna see the Zarya Reaper bubble meta come in, and maybe it'll end up being a thing in like Overwatch League or something. I don't know, but at least in ladder play, I haven't seen it that much because I think Bastion's just a little bit more consistent in games. But yeah, I mean, back at the start of Overwatch, that's what I was doing. It was like me, Seagull, Emong with 3 stack, and I just bubble Seagull in every fight on Reaper, and he'd literally kill the entire team. I just just played AFK. It was great. So other than that, though, I think she's okay. I think she's fun. I don't think there's a huge problem with her. But I do think that maybe on some levels she'll always kind of be one of those characters where you either buff her and she comes a little too strong, or you nerf her and all of a sudden nobody plays her for 3 months.
Salt, I've heard a lot of people feel like Zarya's unfun, like both to play and against. Do you agree with that?
Yes. I feel like Zarya is that one hero that if you just want to turn off your brain, pretty much, you play. Because it's always and forever been that hero that DPS play tank and they jump on Zarya. Because it's just very simple. Bubble, timing, it's not hard to learn, and you just aim and shoot. I do like Zarya as a hero. She does have her weaknesses and she has a lot of strengths. But I don't know, it's just not fun to play against or to play. Because most of the time when I've played Zarya, I just get fucking one shot from across the map by a Widow, or I'm getting beamed down. But when I go against a Zarya, I'm thinking in my head like, bro, has she got 5 bubbles? What's going on? She always has a fucking bubble. And then anytime I'm on another target, it's a bubble. So it's very frustrating. I think she's very strong. Yeah, like Flat said, she is on that verge of being too much or like too weak. And I think right now she's okay, I guess. But yeah, I think being able to double bubble yourself is a bit too much. So I agree with Yeatle there as well.
Right, so add that potential cooldown. Spilo, anything to add on Zarya?
Yeah, I mean, I think she suffers from a little bit the Orisa syndrome, where you have like a brawl tank with no mobility, so it's like sometimes it feels like you're playing beam simulator, just like felt like I've got AM radio in my ears like 24/7, or like Salt was saying, I'm playing a sniper comp and I'm like, can I play, guys? Like I'm 0 charge the entire game. So if you don't have like that DPS going aggressive with that dive comp or that brawl tank to like trade with it can feel kind of bad. I know I'm the mobility creep guy, so whatever. But at least she has the ability to like take space or help people take space split from her that Orisa doesn't have. Like I can bubble, the Genji guy over there, or oh, my backline's getting dove over there. I can bubble that off and help there. So that's definitely helpful. But I do think like it can still be a little bit weird with Zarya, where it's like if the fight's right here, I'm great. If it's not, I don't have the Ramattra, I don't have the JunkerQueen mobility. Or even really the consistent range that they have. And I definitely don't have pin like Ryan, So it's like if it's here, I'm good. If it's not, I think she's okay. I think she's not near the top 5, 6, 7 heroes that I'd even want to concern with. But not my favorite character for those reasons.
Yeah, a little bit boring. I would feel as well. Like just a little bit one-dimensional, but yet complete in some ways. Like she's she's one dimensional in the sense that it's like you're just like bubble and energy and shoot, but then like the completeness comes from the fact that the bubble can go other places, and so you're not only doing one thing. You can throw a bubble on someone else, and that's fine. But then from your end, it's just like hold M1 and then right click at range. It's like it's kind of it's not dynamic, I guess, and maybe that's something down the line to look at. But who knows? Considering the myriad of other things that are far more important, which is where we will head to for our concluding thoughts. So I know we've gone. It's an epic 3-hour marathon here of just discussing tanks. So I appreciate you guys giving me your time for it. So let's have concluding thoughts, and we'll bring back some hot takes. So give me your this is the number one thing they need to do for tanks. Now that could be a specific tank, that could be tanks overall, but your number one argument, sell it to the audience listening. What should they do for tanks? I'm gonna go to Spilo first. Spilo.
Healthy skill curves for every character, DPS, support, and tank. Ease of support, ease of application with support CC, ease of application with DPS value. That's the curse for tank. Tank has to deal with it more than any other role because we're the front line. We have to interact with everything of the worst. So if Reaper, Bastion, ease of application for Discord, ease of application for Javelin, casted grenade, as we were talking about earlier, Mayfreeze, everything that's easy to apply and stupid in terms of skill curve, the tank has to deal with it. So I know people talk about, low ranks, low ranks, low ranks. Low ranks deal with it just as much as high ranks, if not worse. Bastion is even worse to deal with for a low rank player than it is for a high rank player. It's healthy skill curves. It's good for bronze, it's good for Overwatch League.
Very succinct. He had the answer ready, I think. He did the homework already. Let's go to Flats next. Flats.
Oh man, I don't like this, but this is going to be my answer anyways. I don't think there is one thing we can do and fix it. I think it's become a fundamental systematic problem that neither 5v5 or 6v6 can fully even just, if we just tomorrow turned it on, which newsflash is not going to happen. Even if we could, it wouldn't solve it. Game has changed so much over the years, and I think we're kind of fucked. And it's, being the smallest amount of players of the player base, but also being what is always looked at as the most impactful. It's the first thing people look at. They always go, oh, my tank sucks. So I cannot tell you how many times I have watched or I've played or I've seen, and people are like, oh, my tank is terrible. But meanwhile, both supports are looking the opposite directions doing DPS, and they have not gotten healed a single time. And they're like, well, I'm supposed to do damage. I'm like, yeah, you are, but your poor guy's dying on cooldown. Or the opposite happens where they're all just pumping everything into them, and then they don't kill everything, and they're like, well, I gave you all my resources. You're supposed to be better. That must be a tank diff. And it's like, you just cannot win. And there is no winning anymore. And even when you win games, it still feels sad. And I think that's probably the worst part of all, is you don't feel happy you won a game. You feel relieved that you won a game. And I don't know how to change that.
Damn, dude. Making me sad. Salt, come on, make me happy. What you got?
Well, to make tank healthy, better, enjoyable role, they need to take a good look at support. And, well, to be honest, DPS is fine, I guess, in my opinion, because you can have answers for those. But support, I just don't like the fact that one character has an answer for everything I do on the support line. And the worst part is there's two of them. I think if they take into account how stupid it is for supports to be able to do so much, especially have an ability that negates my entire ult. It's just not enjoyable. I think that's the worst thing about the game is when you sig ult and someone, life with a pull, or you got someone in the corner and then you got a cleanse. It's just, I don't know. For me, it's just, I've done all this work and just the support just instantly takes it away from me with one ability. Doesn't even have to aim. It's just like, nice, man. Nice. GG's.
GG's, Yeatle? Is it GG's?
It's GG's, man. No, I don't think so. I think the problem is, there's things that are in the game that are broken. And the way I describe broken is if most of the roster can't outplay it, then it's broken in that sense. And I feel like the list isn't very long. it's one-shots, it's immortality, and it's Ana, because most of the roster can't do anything to deal with that. And I think you can go one of the two ways. You can either buff tanks to have tools to better deal with those things or to outplay it, better said, or you can just nerf those things, which I would prefer if that happened because I just think it would be better. So that's pretty much it. I think deal with one shots. Immortality needs more of a catch to it, and Ana has way too much going for her between sleep and nade. How do you block it? It's only Matrix can stop it. Every other tank gets fucked. One of the two are hitting them. So yeah.
I just want to say, like, imagine how mad supports would be if we had immortalities or a movement ability that self-healed us. Just saying. Or a self-cleanse. Just saying. Or an instant escape through the walls to my teammate. Just saying.
Well,
But
there
you
are
have 500 HP. What do you mean?
Yeah. Oh, another thing as well. Why the fuck can Junkrat one-shot you with ult? Like, that's so dumb. I'm just gonna say, Tyre needs a looking at. It should not be able to one-shot you, even if you're not using mitigation. It should leave you at like 1 health. Or like, 50 health. It should not one-shot you, no matter what tank I'm playing. I'm just gonna say that.
scattered, some parting shots fired in every direction there from Unsalted.
Jeez, man.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think from my perspective, I think there's a bigger problem that the devs have to address. I don't know if they will address it. I kind of share Flask's cynicism in the sense that I don't even see it on the horizon of like issues. I just think the way the workflow of Overwatch 2 is, it's like I don't think they're ever going to stop to be, or maybe if they will, it'll be like 2 years from now, to stop to be like, hey guys, should we actually think about like the format change we made and like what that means for how to like address our game? What do we want our game to look like and like how should it play? I don't think those are things that are on their forefront. I think a lot of it is just like, oh my god, just make sure that roughly everyone is 50% win rate and roughly everyone is getting picked a lot. Like that's like it's like you're constantly curing the symptoms but not the disease, right? You're constantly just doing one thing right now instead of looking at what I think is like just the what I spoke about earlier in my rant about like the star player role of tank. Is just that you've created this situation where there's a singular character with a lot of responsibility, where every other role has a partner to kind of split the job with, but you haven't really fundamentally made sure that that one person can have a satisfying experience and is properly equipped to do everything that's being asked of them. I agree that there's a community issue. I think the community has not caught up on helping their tanks. Like there's a lot of like, I'll pick whatever I want and my tank better make sure he counter swaps to their tank, otherwise, or whatever they're now swapping, he better swap off, but I'm locking Mercy. It's like the number of times when I was playing tank, it's just like Moira Mercy, and I'm like, there's no way I win this game. Like I just cannot win this game like with this backline. Like it can't be done.
But it's kind of what Salt talked about earlier with Ryan, like with his whole thing. It's like people don't want to do that. They don't have fun with it. So like you're screwed.
Yeah, which is why I think there needs to be an answer somewhere. I don't know what the answer is. I can throw out ideas, but I obviously cannot test them meaningfully. I think there could be something to do with like how much swapping occurs in a game. That's one thing that might help tanks, is like some way to limit how much swapping occurs in a game. Whether, obviously I'm a fan of the draft mode, but it doesn't have to be a draft mode. It can just be a limit of the number of times or the occasions in which you could swap. There could be ways to address how
like 3 max heroes that you can swap to and you have to pre-select them.
Yeah, something like that's an option, right? That's an idea, and something maybe to address. It's the chaining of things that feels problematic as tank, right? It's not necessarily that I am upset that I get slept or hacked. It's when I get slept and then hacked, and then a third thing hits me. So there's something that maybe addresses the stacking of crowd control on a tank.
Buffing
Maybe
tank passive.
Yeah, the
Some
tank
way, shape, or form.
passive, and then of course, as you guys have mentioned, the power of supports being able to like negate a lot, but also not just one but two. I think that's the problem. If it was like, maybe I know some people would have like the really crazy, insane, unhinged level takes where they're like, let's have one, like, split the supports. Like, how people were like, there should be a specific off tank queue and a main tank queue. If you could split the supports to be like one immo only. Now we could talk about like, okay, I've baited out enough of the cooldowns. Like one powerful cooldown holder only. So like, okay, I got the Kiriko to use her crap, but the other person's a Lucio, so that doesn't matter. Like, they're not going to just pop a cooldown and screw me. But now the problem is there's a Kiriko, but there's also like an Ana or a BAP that you need to worry about. So there's a lot of issues and a lot of potential solutions. I hope we consider them, is all I'll ask of any developer listening. I hope we'll consider some of them and not just, stick our head in the sand, put a blindfold on and just like, oh, it's fine, we'll slap a buff on this guy and it's all good. So that's my feelings. Any other thoughts from the fellas here? Raise your hand or anything you want to say before we let you get going. No? Awesome. Well, I know you guys have talked your heart out. You've given a passionate defense and argument and plea to tank players all over of how the role feels. We'll hear what the supports think next time. I'm sure they think it's all a lot of hooey. But from my end, guys, appreciate your time so much. So thank you very much to Spilo, Yeatle, UnsaltedSalted, and Flash as always for giving me your time. Please show these guys some love. And peace out, guys. I hope I'll see you soon.